let's go ahead and go in 3, 2, 1, go. So of course, we're going to need a fighter ace. Got our second fighter here, Bill. Our red mage, Cal. And unfortunately, we're stuck with Dan. Nothing I could really do about that. He just wanted to come along. So there we are, ready to go into the town of Corneria. That was actually a pretty good time getting my splits in for the character names. So that's something I do a lot of practice on, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we have Ace, Rapier, Bill with Rapier, Cal with Rapier, and Dan with Rapier as well. So these are just the same starting gear that I'd be buying in the US version as well. Head on over and pick up some chainmail as well. Chainmail and rapiers are really the best gear that you can get at really the early part of the game, where melee is a very critical thing for starting off. You watch the challenge run on Friday, you would have seen how difficult it is sometimes to get party bootstrapped if they don't have a lot of early offensive capabilities. Especially those black mages and white mages, they have a real struggle. Not to mention the thief. Thief was pretty bad. We somehow made it through it. Can I speak Japanese, or do I memorize the cursor locations? I can speak Japanese, but for playing the game fast, you do want to know where you are in the menus. Speaking of which, let's go. Our 5 imps and a chance to strike first here, so that means I must have finished the game last time. Hey, Evan, welcome in. I just saw Dan successfully get the run there, so that's not the character I wanted to see. Bill is actually the person that would get me better luck for the Ghoul and Garland fight. We'll go ahead and see which of the Dan variants this is. So Bill's actually the most common. It doesn't tell you guaranteed exactly what's going to happen. But if I'm a little bit late from my desired frame, I'll get Dan. If I'm a little bit early, I'll get either Ace or Cal. Hey, Marks, welcome in. Glad you enjoyed the challenge run. That was a lot of fun. That was definitely more challenging than I was expecting going into it, just because of the character classes that I ended up rolling in that. I was kind of hoping I would get at least one good early game character. A fighter, red mage, or black belt. Any of the three would have made that so much easier for a lot of sections. Alright, we should be finishing up Garland here pretty soon. Doesn't have a ton of hit points, there he goes. But he is pretty challenging if you don't have good armor. Those attacks that he's doing, which are just kind of barely scratching us on this party, will be like one-shotting or very close to one-shotting most of the other character types that can't use chainmail. I'll be doing another random run sometime soon. I probably would only do that maybe like once a month or so. It's definitely a time-consuming thing, so I don't want to try to promise it too often. It was very draining as well, I will say that. Why is it my Final Fantasy Legend 2 world record up on speedrun.com? Probably because I have not bothered to submit things for a couple months. I'm just kind of lazy. We're going to need Cure for Cal, we need Cure for Dan as well. We're also going to pick up a sleeping bag, which is what this version calls tents. So tents, cabins, and houses turn into sleeping bags, tents, and cottages. It's really confusing to go back and forth between them because they use different things for tents and cottage, basically. It's pretty much the same, even though there is more text in the Japanese version for explaining the storyline. They shortened it up in terms of just like the overall flow of how that initial series of dialogue boxes goes, rather than making it a whole bunch longer in English. Let's get past our first fight there, which is going to be Imp, Grimp, Wolf, and Gerwolf. Is the clinic a church? Yes. So in this version, you have, instead of the clinic and the doctor, a church and a priest if you need to revive characters. They also have a cross outside instead of the heart. Those are the type of things that got censored for the US release. Anything that was like a religious reference had to go. Oh man, we got 4 can't runs here. It's not so bad because we didn't get the Grey Wolf. The plain wolves by themselves are going to do 0-1 unless they get a critical. The Grey Wolf can do significantly more damage, and so I take this battle because it's only got a 50% chance at Grey Wolves, whereas the one before it has a 67% chance. There we go, Bill getting us out of there. Try to get our creep as well. We want to get the creep, or Gigaswarm as it is called in this version. Just a very fast run. They do significantly more damage than those wolves would, because we need to save all of our HP for fighting ogres. I want to have 2 ogres before fighting the Kaizaku at Provoca. They swapped the names of Kaizaku and Pirate for the English release as compared to the Japanese one, which actually makes sense. So Kaizaku is the Japanese word for pirate. And in the English version, you've got pirates in Provoca and Kaizakus on the ocean. And in Japanese, you've got the reverse. Kaizakus in the town and pirates outside. It's just like a kind of an in-joke with the translation. There's a bunch of small things that are different graphically, and I'll try to point them out as we come across. The Beholder is one of the really big ones. Beholder was a graphic and a concept that was copyright by the owners of Dungeons & Dragons, and while they very liberally borrowed from Dungeons & Dragons for this game, Beholder was one of the few things which they felt they couldn't get away with when they released it in the US market. And because it was an actual copyright problem, it's also never been in the remakes as well. So the Famicom, maybe the MSX version, I would have to go back and check that one to see if it's got it, but there's very, very few versions out there that actually has the Beholder artwork in it. Alright, we got our 2 ogres there, so we're ready to go fight Vicky. I'm going to go ahead and heal up here. 35 is right on the border for where it's safe, just in case we got 2 critical hits on Ace by the Kaizaku. This is something I started doing recently, which is go buy the ice spell first. There's a bunch of townspeople that spawn in once you've killed off Vicky's crew. Here we go, Blizzardo for Cal right there. And so I don't have to deal with them going across this way. But I do have to deal with Mohawk Guy. That's actually one downside of that. Fight, 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 and fight. Here are the Kaizaku battles. Alright, I'm basically saying that the MSX version has identical graphics other than colors. I would probably believe that it came out early enough that they wouldn't have done a lot of the editing for US localization yet. The MSX has got a couple of big differences though. It's got a different color palette, a very different sound chip, so a lot of the music was remixed, and it also has no scrolling hardware. Smooth scrolling in the NES is one of the things that made the console really successful. We kind of take it for granted that you can pan pixel by pixel on a lot of action, which allows you to smoothly scroll the screen in any direction. And pretty much every NES game, except for single screen games like maybe Donkey Kong, do that. But a lot of other competing computers and systems at the time didn't have that capability. And the MSX, you see it because it has to scroll tiles at a time, so you have a really jerky series of steps as you walk across the landscape. Dragon Quest and the MSX suffers from the same problem. Let's go ahead and get a wooden shield for Ace and Bill. That's 2 extra absorb for them, and there's really very little downsides to getting shields because they're cheap, they have no weight penalty, and they generally give you pretty good absorb overall, which is an important attribute to have for melee. Okay, then 1, 2, and 3 Nebugaro, which are the sleeping bags. And then we'll go ahead and save at the end here to start our pirate battling in order to get cash for buying the rest of the equipment. We'll also work on some ogres as well to get level 3 here in a bit, or level 4. Here we go. Let's get one without the cryptic graphics. That's my system doing that. And we get one measly pirate here. What is no memory corruption? So there is a way to basically overwrite values in memory with the Famicom version, which allows you to beat the game in about 7 minutes. It's not a particularly exciting run, and so if you want to see actual gameplay, you have to stipulate that this is prohibiting you from doing that memory corruption bug. Okay, unfortunately, only one Kaizoku means that I have to hope that I get a good amount right here. I want to see a total of about 5 Kaizokus between these two fights, and there's 1 to 5 in each of the formations. Alright, we got 5 Kaizokus. They did strike me first. Sorry, pirates. We got 5 pirates in this version. So this is going to hurt real bad. But it does mean I'm back on track for my money and XP totals. Now, I'd much prefer to have the 5 pirates in the first battle because I do use the tent to heal the party up. And that's also what I do to skip encounters. So I would have basically gotten a free heal of 30 HP for everybody if this had been the first battle rather than the second. Instead, we'll have to dip into a whole bunch of our cure spells right away. Alright, I really want that one dead up there at the top. Just trying to clear out some of these pirates so that I get less damage per round coming in. Of course, Dan, a failure, has not been able to get any of these good hits in. Let's see if Ace and Bill can take out this bottom one. There we go, they got one. A lot of aquatic creatures just have really high evade, so in the early game when you're not particularly accurate, you'll see that you miss them a lot. I mean, the monsters also miss you a lot, so it's kind of balanced in that regard. But it does make it for a lot of unpredictability in terms of how long some of these battles take as a result. There we go, one left. Alright, now we got a bunch of cash. So, pirates in this version, 120 gil apiece is a pretty significant starting value. You'll have kind of a bit of a money crunch right at the beginning whenever you play this game because they throw you into the world basically with no gear. And the early game monsters that you can fight are not particularly valuable, with a few exceptions. And that's why I manipulate out a lot of the encounters that are going to be particularly good. For example, ogres here give me really good experience relative to their difficulty and fairly good money. Kaizokus are extremely good money, allowing me to quickly buy weapons and spells that I'll need to progress on. And so this gets me up and running for doing more sustained activities. I need to get eventually to level 6 before I go into Marsh Cave. That's my first really big dungeon that's going to be hard. But in order to get there, just having the ice spell on both mages and getting the short sword for the fighters is going to be a really big win for making these battles go faster. Are there any bugs in this version that are not in the US version or vice versa? So, I mean, the big one is the memory corruption glitch, which, while it technically works on both versions, the Japanese version has characters in the names that allow you to do much more with it. The US version just coincidentally doesn't have them line up to the same spots that you would need to take advantage of that. And so you're not able to do the same type of really cool memory corruption tricks as a result. In terms of gameplay bugs, they didn't really fix anything between the Famicom and Japanese releases. So most of the gameplay fixes for the first time were on the WonderSwan version. And the WonderSwan color is where most of the remake Final Fantasies derive their lineage from. So WonderSwan color had Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 4. It was supposed to have Final Fantasy 3 and then that got cancelled pretty much at the last minute. Because the color, or the WonderSwan in general, was pretty much a flop commercially, and so they decided to pull back from all of their development efforts. But that's why, for example, 1, 2, and 4 were available in so many different versions for remakes, and then 3 didn't come along until much later. Alright, so 2 ogres here. This should get me level 4 now. And I'm going to be using my Blizzarder spell to take this top one down, hopefully without too much trouble. We don't have any more cure spells left, so if we get pounded really hard by these ogres, there's not much I can do about it, Cal. Just try and stay alive. Hang on there, buddy. There you go. Hit Dan some. That's a good trade-off. I want to keep the mages alive as much as possible because they're usually the tightest in terms of XP growth. Like, for example, when I say I need level 6 here, it's really only the mages so that they can get 3rd tier spells, the ones that are available at Elfland. I want to have Thundara and Fyra before I get too much farther on in the game. There we go. Ogres have been terminated. And we got our level. I basically count out ideally 5 pirates and 5 ogres here as a way to get to level 4 and have enough money for all my shopping. 2 short swords, and the other Blizzarder spell is 1500 plus 50 more gold for staying at the inn. Here's all these annoying townsfolk just waiting to jump in front of my path. In the remake versions, later on, it will actually reset the positions of NPCs if you go into a building, which allows you to clear out the town for walking to make that a little bit easier. Nothing saves you from the caves, unfortunately. Alright, so there we go. Short swords in this version called broadswords. Everything's got like slightly different names that you have to just kind of get used to. Do I plan for going for world record sometime soon? Yes. So we should be switching over to world record once I kind of sit down and get a chance to practice it some. I also had to finish up work on Final Fantasy Legend 2. That's another big project. Final Fantasy Legend 2 is a very time-consuming effort because of all of the vision recognition that has to go into that. But I definitely want to get that underway and then start the Final Fantasy 1 world records practice. As well as kind of work on what Final Fantasy looks like for the world record route. Again, I've had a bunch of ideas for it, but until I sit down and do a bunch of testing, I'm not going to be able to really calibrate the monster point values. I might come up with something that tries to reuse as much of the existing point values as possible, and just have a mechanic that compensates for the fact that a lot of world record runs are not going to survive past Marsh Cave. Actually, for world record runs, there's just a whole bunch of spots all over the run where you're very likely to die, so very few of the attempts are ever going to finish. So one of the big things that you have to deal with from a fantasy perspective is you spend most of your time in like the first, 30 minutes to an hour of the game. Just playing that a lot. Hey, Superflare Star, welcome in. Alright, let's go ahead and pick up some ogres here. So this is going to be getting me to about level 5 1/4, 5 1/2 by the time we finish up with this loop of ogre fighting. I'll use the money I get from doing this to do all of my shopping for the Marsh Cave section. And that way I can just finish up level 6 and go right over down to where Elfland is without having to stop back in at Provoca a final time. What's different in this run besides the text? So the text actually is pretty much the same speed between US and Japanese. Like there might be some screens which are more condensed so that there's just like less lines of text, but the time it takes to draw it is almost identical. The big differences mostly are going to be just graphically. There were a couple of things that they did censor between the releases. So religious references, anything that I thought might even be remotely sexual. So they put like some extra clothing on the Medusas, like very, very minor things were changed. Probably the most troubling to me is that they got rid of the beautiful Beholder artwork, which we will see in the Ice Cave. That's what the eye was based on. And they had to change it to avoid trademark infringement with the owners of Dungeons & Dragons, as well as copyright for the descriptions of Beholders. And unfortunately, they couldn't come up with something as cool as the original artwork was. Alright, we got our Ogre and Ogre Chief, which is the original name for the Groger. Now, if you ever played the remake versions, PlayStation Portable, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation, whatever, you'll notice that most of the names they use for items, spells, and everything for monsters is pretty much the same as the original Japanese version. So basically, when Final Fantasy first came out, they did a bunch of renaming of things to fit into the limitations of the text boxes, just for like size reasons and constraints. And then when they did the remakes, they basically backed that all out so that you had almost identical to everything from original Japanese. I like that in some regard, because a lot of the translation was kind of forced to just kind of constrain themselves to those limits. But at the same time, they had a few things that were really good that they came up with, and I wish they kind of continued on for it with those. Like Agamas. Agamas are wonderful. So we're gonna have fire lizards. Hey, Panatorius, welcome in. Okay, I'm not going to heal Cal here, which might be somewhat overconfident, but I'm about to hit a tent to skip an encounter after this, and so I don't want to heal up when there is less than 30 HP left afterwards. That way I get the full value of my tent. And we've used both of our ice spells already, which means we've gotten a pretty decent number of double ogres up to this point. Double ogres are 50-50. And every time you get one, it saved me a little bit of time frame-wise, because I don't have to do as many steps of walking around. It's going to be slower for the battles, but the time that you do save does add up over the course of this grind. I kind of have it planned out so that even if I got really bad luck with lots of single ogres, I would have enough battles, at least, available to me that I would always hit level 6 at the end of this trip. Go ahead, sleeping bag past this encounter, so there's no really good fights that I can get access to right there. I'm manipulating the encounters to get as many ogres as possible. When I can't get ogres, I want something that's almost as good as XP-wise for it at this point. Iguana is really the only thing that really fits that description. So every once in a while you'll see me go and grab an iguana fight when there's no ogres nearby. But if I can't get ogres or iguanas, then skipping the battle is actually faster than trying to run. Until you've got a couple more levels, running is very, very difficult for your party. It's probably much harder than it was supposed to be early on, and then much easier than it was supposed to be late on. So I guess you kind of get some payback for that towards the end game. Now we should be hitting level 5 here pretty soon. Level 5, we will get a really big upgrade in power for our fighters. At that point, the base accuracy of the fighters plus the short swords right here is going to give me enough accuracy to get 2 attacks per round, which is basically just looking at your accuracy score, and every 32 points you get an extra bonus attack, which for this party with their endgame gear will give us 4 attacks per round. For most of the game, there will be either at 2 attacks up through Gurgly Volcano, and then 3 attacks up through Temple of Fiends. No kanji in this, correct. So, the resolution of the NES was not really that good to support it, and for anything that has to have a font, for example, hand-drawn characters, having kanji is actually a rather time-intensive and expensive investment for it. So they did eventually start putting kanji into games, especially for title sequences, but once they built it once, they could start reusing it within the same production company. Early NES games, though, or early Famicom games, they tended not to have it. Yeah, 16-bit systems like the Super Nintendo generally were a little bit more aggressive about using kanji, because they could, at that point, more or less digitize existing fonts. They could use shading for the colors of the drawing, allowing you to have a little bit higher resolution for the character strokes and make it more visible on the screen. But it wasn't really until like the PlayStation era where they had 40i resolution that they could realistically have very good looking text in Japanese. Now I've got, let's see, one more ogre, then an iguana, then an ogre. We'll go back to town after that. And I should be able to afford an iron armor for Ace, which is a nice upgrade for his absorb. Ace is going to get hit a lot in this game. He's the first party member, which is got a 50% chance of being targeted by the monster's attacks. Bill in the second slot's got a 25%, and the two mages are at 12.5%. It's, well, not quite 12.5%, but really close. There's a bug that causes it to be slightly imbalanced between the third and fourth character slots. Which version has the more competitive world record? The NES version by a long shot. I actually have the world record for the Famicom version with the marathon route, just because there's not that many Japanese runners that have really put time into the game. So this is like, 20 minutes faster than any of the Japanese times on the leaderboards. There's my iguana, or as it's called in this original version, the lizard. So lizard and fire lizard turned into iguana and agama. And they probably could have fit those in. I don't know why they decided to shorten them. Lizard certainly fits into the characters provided, and you could have used like F lizard or F dot lizard or something. And it would have made perfect sense for the agamas as well. Like they did do that for a lot of things like dragons and ogres, where they had either a color or a element associated with them that was used for the naming convention. So I'm not sure why they didn't do it for the lizards. Alright, and one last ogre to take down. And we'll go in and start doing our shopping. So I'm going to buy a big stack of tents here. Also start buying pure potions as well as heal potions, so antidotes and heals. Or I guess in this case, just potions in the Japanese version. It'll take me a little bit of time before I get back to the correct names. Oops, I should not have gotten the Mad Pony battle. I was standing too far to the left for that. Alright, there we go. So, iron armor for Ace. Go ahead and put that on. That's increasing his absorb from 15 to 24, which is actually a pretty significant bump at this point in the game. Most monsters don't do that much damage, and so subtracting 24 off of every single one of the hits is going to more or less neutralize everything except for the hardest hitting fighters. Okay, there's 5 sleeping bags so far, and we're going to get a total of 13 here. $10 down, 3 more to go. Next up, antidote potions. We get 10 of these. Now this is pretty conservative. You could get away with like 7 and probably be safe every time going through Marsh Cave. There is, as long as you're staying on the step route, not that many battles where you have poisonous monsters, and usually you only have 0 or 1 characters getting poisoned, so it's not like your entire party needs to get antidote up every single time. Alright, now we're gonna get 6 potions here. So this is just my backup in case I run out of cure spells during Marsh Cave, which is something that does happen, but is fairly rare. Okay, we'll have about 1,400 gold ending out of this. I want to see around 3,500 normally when I finish the grind, so that's actually not that many ogres I need to get. Now you notice a bug every time I turn the power off and press reset really fast. It causes it to have display speed 0, which is technically the same as display speed 1 for the actual speed for it. It's just a graphical bug for illustration purposes there. That is something that also happens in the US version, but is less common. It's like pretty much 100% here on the Famicom version. And then there is differences in title screen's behavior that causes that. The title screen for the US version, they added some input polling so that you can actually clear the title screen without pressing reset. You can just hit any button on the controller as well. There we go, 94 for Ace and Cal, 87 for Bill and Dan. So nobody clears their ogres, but Ace and Cal did take our ogre battling composition first round. So we have a little bit of a competition between our party about who can do the most damage to ogres. Whenever we see a double ogre pair here in this final loop, we go and fight against one another. Usually they do kill the ogres, which is why I split them up in the first place. So it's a little bit faster than attacking them one at a time. There you go, Bill and Dan. Let's see if you can do any better. Ooh, 35, that's not a good one. So 79 for Bill and Dan there. There we go, 156. Ace with the overkill on that one. So Ace and Cal have clinched at 2-0. We'll do one more so that Bill and Dan can play for pride here. Won't want to be shut out of ogre battling tonight. I think Bill and Dan on the US version have won 3 in a row since we last had an Ace and Cal victory, so maybe it's just their Japanese-speaking counterparts that are much better at fighting these things. Statistically, there is no difference between the characters right now. Both the fighters have equivalent level ups every single time. 86 for the top one. And the mage's spells actually don't matter for attack power, and Bill and Dan do at least avoid the embarrassment of a shutout there, so 2-1, Ace and Cal take it. That should put us up around like 2,600 gold, so probably 4 or 5 more ogres to go. Let's start getting the Groger down here. So normally I would do everybody on the weaker character, in this case the ogre, to try to eliminate the enemy DPS on the first turn. But the mages do so much less damage on Grogers, thanks to having a lower base attack power, that it's better to have the mages on the plain ogre and the fighters go after the Groger to start. And again, we're doing this to get level 6 overall. Level 6 will get a 3rd tier spell charge for the first time, which I'm going to start with Thundara on this party. Thundara will let me have a pretty easy time with the Marsh Cave, specifically the wizards in there. Without Thundara, you're going to have a really tough time killing off 4 wizards. Even sometimes 3 wizards is a bit of a challenge. And so you have to kind of hope, if you want to go without it, that you get exactly 2 wizards, which is, 1/3 chance of happening. And that's what the very first big obstacle on the world record strats is going to be, is just surviving that Marsh Cave trip. I mean, world record strats will have a single cast of Thundara there, so you do have a little bit of hope for it, but it's not nearly as much as you'd get with this one. Miracle, welcome in. And for version differences, I'll be talking about those quite a lot over the course of the run here. Yep, I knew I wouldn't be able to make it, so I went ahead and did my tent there. Go ahead and tent up again to get past the Kaizakus. The short story, though, is that there's not any major version differences other than the fact that there is a memory corruption bug, which you can exploit in the Famicom version to beat the game in like 7 minutes. So if you're excluding that, which I do for this category, then this is very similar to what you see for the NES playthrough on the Marathon route as well. Come on, there you go. Gotta get every one of those squares very exact because I've just built in enough steps to get all the way to town here. I basically skipped a Kaizaku battle as well as a Sahagwin battle in order to make that work out. It's very, very tight, though, to make it in Delftland. Alright, so you need Thundara, and you need Thundara. Go ahead and reset the encounters again to set up my trip for Marsh Cave. The first thing I'm going to burn off is an imp captain and a pair of werewolves there. Then we got some plain ogres. And these guys are actually still decent experience right now. They're going to quickly become almost irrelevant in terms of XP once we get through the Mystic Key section of the game. But I still need a little bit more XP before I get there. So I'm basically starting here at level 6, pretty much on the dot every time. And I want to be level 7 by the time that we get the Mystic Key quest done. And I do have a battle against Astos, which, depending on whether or not anybody dies in that fight, I'll either get 600 or 750 experience from that. I'll have 2 to 4 wizards, and even if I get somebody dead on Astos and 4 wizards, it's not quite enough for my level 7 on red mages. And so I have these ogre fights planned out to make up the difference, and if this is insufficient, then I'll also get some shark battles once we go to the sailing section of it. Skip over the Ogre Gigasworm combo. Gigasworm or Creep is just worse XP per minute and almost as dangerous as ogres are, so you want to avoid them when you can. Get rid of our arachnids, which I think they've swapped around all the names of the spider type creatures there, so it might be spider instead of arachnid or tarantula. I forget which one it's in this version. I'll see it as soon as I get to the poisonous party mix group. Basically the snakes and spiders, for some reason they just kind of completely scrambled up the names. They did that for some of the undead as well. Like Ghoul, Ghost, or Ghoul, Spectre, and Geist all have a lot of things scrambled between them. So if you hear me saying unfamiliar things for some of the character sprites on the screen, it is because of version differences for naming. Now at this fight, I'm going to use one more sleeping bag. This is to get my HP back so I can not have to worry about going into Marsh Cave here. I've got a fairly limited supply of cure spells, and using one sleeping bag there is better than having to use multiple heal potions later on. It's also an emergency backup in case something really goes wrong here in the cave. I don't think I've ever had that happen. Like almost every time I have to do something strange, it's actually better to get resurrected later on than to retry the cave. Look at that. Away from the mucks, aka Grey Oozes. So Grey Ooze is the Dungeons & Dragons name. So if you actually want to know exactly what Dungeons & Dragons monster they stole things from, this is the version to play to find out. There's Bloody Bones, or R-Bones as we know him. Get our skeletons and our crawler, which crawler is the first monster here which I have to deal with in the cave that's going to have paralysis. I try to avoid paralysis as much as possible, given that it's a very, very unforgiving status element to have. Paralysis, you only have a 25% chance of snapping out of each turn. That means your entire party can quickly become stun locked. There you go, Bat. If I had gone ahead there without waiting, the Bat would have actually blocked my exit out through the door on the other side. Bats cannot move while you're inside of interior rooms, and so he would just be standing there forever, and I would have to get off of my step route to fix it. Yeesh. A lot of damage from that Bloody Bones. Okay, they're done though. We're on to Poisonous Party Mix time. There's Tarantula, and Black Widow, and Gray Ooze. So we didn't get Green Ooze, who is the fourth member of Poisonous Party Mix. 2 in 9 chance of seeing all 4 of them show up. This is Spider Arachnid Scum and Muck in the US version for this. I probably should have just walked around with Ace being poisoned there for a little bit of time to avoid a menu trip, because I'm about to go into the menu again to put on the Iron Armor here too, Bill. If you're patient, you actually don't need to buy any Iron Armors at all. There is another one that's in Conneria Castle that you can pick up for free. But I like having both of my fighters with Iron Armor before the Wizard battle. The Wizards hit really, really hard. Once again, Tarantula, Black Widow, and Gray Ooze showing up for Poisonous Party Mix, but still no Green Oozes. We'll have a guaranteed battle with them on the way back out, and then one last chance to get the full Poisonous Party Mix in all its glory. There we go, Cal getting us out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and heal up here for getting ready for the Wizards. Let's see. You need some heals. You need some heals. You're out. That should probably be good. And we do have Thundara here, which is the big thing that makes this battle so much easier. Wizards, or in this case, Pisco Demons in this version, because this is directly going to be Mind Flayers and Pisco Demons now, are resistant to everything except for lightning. So lightning is not doing extra damage to them. It's just that fire and ice would be halved here. And since they don't have that much base attack power on those spells, having them makes it so that you'd probably need 3 or 4 casts to reliably kill them. Oh man, we even left one Pisco Demon alive there. Good job with the cleanup. See, those things do not mess around when it comes to damage. There we go. Crown obtained. This is our first step in the series of swaps that are needed for the Mystic Key. This is probably one of the longest sequences in the entire original Final Fantasy for a single quest. Usually you have generally a fairly condensed thing where you pick up an item, you give it to the NPC that wants it, and that's the end of the quest. Or in like extreme cases, there's like 2 steps for it. Things like the bottle to Axial by way of fairy, or the chime for Mirage Tower by way of Doctor in the Slab. Alright, so we saw our green slimes there for the first time. Let's see, do we get them here? Nope, we just get Tarantula and Gray Ooze. So Tarantula here is the one that's guaranteed to be in every single one of the Poisonous Party Mix encounters. The other 3 monsters are all either 0 to 1 or 0 to 2, which means that they have a 50% chance or a 33% chance of simply not being present in each of the battles. Because I do have 3 of them though, I'll very rarely not see a monster entirely. There are some monsters though that later on in the game, like they only show up in one fight and they're optional, so I might miss them entirely. Hyena, I think, is the best example of that. It's in one battle, and there's a 33% chance of not getting any. Look at that. Shadows with the ambush and the darkness. They're very, very good at that. Shadows basically have a 90% chance of ambush, so you want to avoid them as much as possible. You can do that around the Melmond area. Here in Marsh Cave, I can't manipulate that battle out without causing lots of other problems for this. Hey there, Bat. Now we've made it outside. We're going to go ahead and skip past 2 battles here. This gets me a better encounters on the way up to Astos' castle, so that I can just fight a couple of ogres and get some XP on it. So we had 3 Pisco Demons. We had fairly good luck in terms of ogres on the way here, so we're getting more double ogres as well. Which means we should be in pretty good shape if we get somebody dead on Astos. Very likely somebody does die. Astos has got a 60% chance, if he uses his rub spell, of killing whoever targets Rub is actually not that good. It's just that we've got very poor magic defense at this point in the game. So if you would come to Ashes a few levels later, the odds would be much better that you'd be able to just shrug off Rub. With this party basically be dropping by 1 to 1.5% per level for the chance of killing you. Which is why by the time you get Rub around like level 25 or so, all the monsters are powerful enough that it really doesn't ever work. Now we're going to go ahead and set up the RNG for the walkback. This is eliminating a bunch of awkward random encounters that I would have to dodge. And instead I've got 2 encounters which have very good, easy to remember steps for actually doing the resets on. That's going to be waiting for Astos here. So Astos with very high magic defense and physical defense, 1 tough cookie. Luckily we do have Ice or Blizzardo. So that's going to be our primary way of dealing damage on him. Or Bill could get a critical. That's a really big hit. You very rarely see the fighters do more than like single digit damage. Alright, there you go. See you later, Ace. Go take a nap. This version, by the way, instead of Rub, it's called Death for the spell name that Astos has. Which is a lot more descriptive of what it's doing. Alright, there's a good Astos fight. Helped with Bill's critical. It basically saved us 1 round of Blizzardos. Now, on the way back, I'm going to go ahead and skip past the 2 encounters. That's why I don't have to worry about my party order, about healing up everybody in between this fight and the trip down to Elfland. I used to do the fights here. There's 1 Ogre Creep battle and 1 Ogre battle. But since there's usually somebody dead, and I don't have to worry about the menuing for it, I decided to just eliminate it entirely. Make up the difference by getting shark encounters instead, once we get back to the boat. And 2. I guess we might as well get Ace resurrected here. This is a planned trip back to Elfland because of how often somebody's going to be dead on Astos. We're going to check out the church here for the first time. Look at that beautiful priest costume. I think they modeled it off of Greek Orthodox for the style of dress for the priest. And there we go, we have completed the Astos bit. Now we need to go to Matoya's cave and start doing the swaps. We have the crown initially. We trade the crown, or I guess we acquire the Crystal Eye based on having presented the crown to Astos. And then the Crystal Eye gets swapped for the herb, and then finally the herb lets us get the Mystic Key. And at that point, you've got access to a bunch of different treasury areas and other parts of the game which were previously blocked off. And it basically opens up most of the mid-game to you, up until the content that is post-Lich, because you need the canoe at Lich to get that. Alright, so level 7 obtained. That means I can go ahead and skip the rest of the battles here. We did have pretty good encounters up through Astos, so I'm not surprising that I got level 7 fairly early in that. I've got 3 more shark battles at the ready, though, in case they were needed. Now, with just 1 crazy horse, we're going to go ahead and give this a pass. Even though it's very similar, for some reason I just like Mad Pony so much more than Crazy Horse. Don't know how to explain it. Maybe it's just nostalgia. Grab an antidote and 2 heal potions here. We finish robbing Old Woman. Go and get the rest of the quest done. Now, you'd only pick up those treasure chests in the original version of the game. Once you've got versions that have faster menuing, so you can buy multiple items in a stack at once, you would not bother getting any of the low value treasure chests. So tents, cabins, heal potions, pure potions, maybe even low value weapons you might all skip. I guess you'd only skip the low value weapons for the versions that give you accelerated golden XP from the monster fights. If you played like the Wonder Swan version before they did all of the buffing to the gold drops, you'd want to still pick up all of the equipment to just sell it for later. Speaking of which, I should probably do the Wonder Swan version again someday. Fortunately for Wonder Swan, there's no way to capture it, so emulation is the only way to go, and I don't really like doing emulator for speedruns, but I'll make an exception for Wonder Swan. Go ahead and check in on the prince. Now this is cutting through town like this to save a bunch of overworld walking steps. You save 10 steps by going through town, even though it does take a while to load in and out. 10 steps is enough that I can get back to the boat before the next encounter, basically causing that encounter to entirely disappear. You also like Makai Toshi Saga and Wonder Swan Color? Yeah, the Makai Toshi Saga is the remake of Final Fantasy Legend 1. That was the platform for Legend 1, and Legend 2 and Legend 3 had remakes on the DS. All of these are Japanese exclusives, so the US version has never been remade on any platform as far as I'm aware. But it's really nice, so I'd love to see it one day. Let's go ahead and drop it at the end so I get my spell charges back. Even though I already have level 7, and I don't need to kill anything at this point, by being able to cast Thundaras here for all of the shark battles, it allows me to guarantee that they're going to end in one round. So if we fail to run away, we'll at least have the battle over with. Or every once in a while, you'll get some free experience like this. Each of the shark Arsahag battles is like maybe one mummy's worth of experience, so it's not going to really swing things in the long run. That's why I don't worry about it too much. I've got a whole bunch of XP coming from the mummy grind. Alright, so we've robbed the Elfland Treasury, we've got the Canary Castle Treasury in hand, we're about to go and get Dwarf Cave and Northwest Castle as well. The two I don't pick up are Temple of Fiends, which has some very nice swords. I was meaning to do that the entire night for the challenge run, and then after a while I just got stubborn that I'm not going to go back there and grab them. And then finally Marsh Cave, which, while you can get a silver armlet there, it is not worth the trip. Just save your 5,000 gold and go to Melmond. It is a far better experience getting the silver armlet at the shop than to go all the way back down to the 3rd floor of that place. Alright, so we're going to need 24 tents here to start with, or sleeping bags I should call them. There's our first 5. These are going to be used for encounter manipulation later on. There's a lot of encounters I need to get rid of over the course of this game. Hey, Dragonfire, welcome in. 10 of them down. $15. $24 left. We'll do a couple of pure potions after this. Antidotes are helpful for the mid-game, although I did not get very many poisons throughout Marsh Cave, so I probably only need 10 here, and I'll be good for the rest of the time. It turns out that I get a whole bunch of poisons at Earth Cave. I can always buy more when I'm either at Crescent Lake immediately afterwards, or when I'm at the trip back here for class change, or even Temple of Fiends at the very end. Alright, that should be enough. We're going to switch over to potions now. I'm going to buy down to, let's say, 1,000 gold here. That's a little bit less than 30 potions, and I have already 9 in my inventory, so this should be like 40, a little bit less than 40 after all the shopping is complete. Potions are helpful for Earth Cave ordeals and Ice Cave. Usually I don't need that many until Ice Cave. Ice Cave is where the first time I get probably beaten up pretty badly. Hey Sherazad, welcome in. Any run affecting changes between the versions? Not noticeably for this category. So I'm excluding the ability to use the memory corruption glitch, which would make the run be only a couple minutes long. So it definitely is very, very different between true any percent on Famicom versus the no memory corruption, which is basically the same as NES. Hey, Cats on Your Head, welcome in. And thanks very much for the host there. You guys are in time for the Famicom version of Final Fantasy here tonight. And we'll get one more heal potion, call it a good day. We'll be ready to go on to Dwarf Cave now. So at Dwarf Cave, there is a bunch of good items that I can pick up here. It's a required trip anyway, in order to just get the canal blown open so that you can get access to most of the outer sea areas with the boat. But since there's such good equipment, you do want to go here at least once after getting the Mystic Key so you can go and rob all their stuff. You can also come to the Dwarf Cave early on, grab 1,000 gold here, which unless you have a party that's relatively slow getting started, I would recommend holding off on doing that. Just collapse them down to one trip. Like for example, the challenge run where I had my 2 black mages, white mage, and thief, that was one where I needed the money. Really badly needed the money to get spells bought in particular. Such happy music they've got playing in the Dwarf Cave, and then you get to the Ice Cave, which got the same music, and then suddenly it's not so happy in your memory anymore. Ice Cave probably the hardest dungeon overall, for both casually as well as for speedrunning. Different reasons though. Speedrunning is just because you're at a ridiculously low level compared to the amount of physical abuse that you're going to be taking from the monsters. For casual play, it's because there is a whole bunch of really nasty encounters the speedrun manipulates out that you're just going to run into over and over again. Things like sorcerers, mages, probably a whole bunch of cockatrices and other things that just can end your gameplay almost instantly. Mages with Fire 3 are the only ones that don't have like a special ability, but Fire 3 is so damaging at that point that it might as well be instant death. Alright, one more skip on the way out. This is going to get rid of a bunch of wolf encounters. So basically the area around Dwarf Cave is very similar in terms of encounters to Pravoka and Elfland areas. So you see a lot of wolves and gur-wolves, a few poisonous monsters. I don't think Dwarf Cave has got a lot of undead with paralysis. Then you've got the rare ogre, which obviously for Pravoka I can manipulate a whole bunch of those to show up, making it one of the better grind spots overall. I've ever played around with the Final Fantasy randomizer. I have done randomizer runs on stream. I'm not a big fan of randomizers in general. So things that are like actually changing up the gameplay. As you can see though, I did have a lot of fun with random character classes. That's like more of a challenge type run than a randomizer though. Every once in a while challenges are good and fun. Alright, here in Elfland we're going to go ahead and do some selling to raise our funds up. So Ace needs to get rid of everything except for that broadsword. Mithril Hammer's going to go, Saber's going to go. It wants to get rid of everything except for the Mithril Knife, which is actually going to be Dan's Mithril Knife here in a minute. And we'll go ahead and get a Mithril Sword for him. So Mithril is what is the original name for all of the silver gear in the US version. Oops. Go ahead and throw the rapiers away. And it's another one of those things that's just a straight up Dungeons and Dragons term. So the reason why silver gear is so lightweight is because it's mithril, which was known for that property in Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, Fyra and Fyra. And in turn, Dungeons and Dragons got it from Tolkien for Lord of the Rings. Alright, we are all set to begin our mummy grind. We're going to go ahead and burn off the encounter here, which is the imp and werewolf fight. I will skip the remaining battles on the way up there because they're just ogres and ogres plus geekus worms. And those are not a good experience at this point. I'm really just looking for mummies to get me up to level 8. A little bit past level 8 so that we can get level 9 for the party before we have to go and fight Lich. Zelda Randomizer is a little bit different because of how much it can actually scramble around. I really like that Zelda Randomizer will randomize the dungeon layouts, and that's what makes it feel like a totally new game. Final Fantasy Randomizer is randomizing the treasure chest locations and a lot of the combat statistics, but you still have the treasure chests in the same spots, the maps are the same, and so on. And so if you relatively know what you're doing, you can more or less get through the randomizer pretty quickly. Also, like one of the big things that the Final Fantasy Randomizer relies on is being able to scramble up damage and survivability and also buff your character classes a lot, which it's different than the philosophy that the Zelda Randomizer uses. We need to move that up. Great Helm, Small Helm, Iron. Put on the Mithril Mail and fight our mummies here. I'll be doing 8 total battles using a Fyra each round here to kill off mummies as fast as possible. Fyra is a really effective spell because all fire-based spells do have 50% bonus damage against undead monsters. Hey Tipo, what does no memory corruption mean? It means I am not using a glitch that allows me to overwrite values in memory. That is something that has a very, very short run. You can actually beat the game in about 7 minutes if you can use that. Whereas the no memory corruption more or less plays the same as the US version. Hey, welcome in, Austin, and yes, there is no bot tonight because the bot does not speak Japanese, unfortunately. I thought about teaching the bot Japanese just to play around with, but I don't do enough runs here on the Japanese version to realistically justify the time investment. Yeesh, Dan taking a pounding. Hopefully Cal can kill all the mummies here so that we don't have another opportunity for Dan to die. Anybody dies here, I'd have to reset and do the start of these battles over again because there's no easy way to revive characters. They'd also miss out on the wonderful mummy experience right there. We're teaching the bot to recognize the images be feasible. I'm assuming you mean the monster images, and it would have to be still able to read the text in order to find out what's going on for like status elements. So I don't think that just the images by themselves are going to be helpful, but teaching the bot to read Japanese would be very similar to what I did teach it to read English in the first place, recognizing individual characters and then piecing those together to form words. In fact, most of the logic for the game itself could be reused. It's just the character and word recognition that would have to be replaced. Go ahead and set up our walk for the way back. So again, I want the same battles as I had for the Astos fight coming out of Northwest Castle here. And so I'm just getting those set up again. We'll also go and loop around for 4 more mummy battles. I should be on pretty good pace for my XP totals. We got 1 of each possible value for the mummy count, so 2 to 5 mummies in each of these formations. Since that was merely an average one, we're going to go ahead and do the left-hand side for the remaining battles. If everything goes well, I should see at the 3rd battle here, level 8 for everybody that was not dead at Astos, which in this case is Bill, Cal, and Dan. You can grind further if you want to. To make Earth Cave safe, level 10 pretty much allows you to finish it every single time without really having to do too much thought into it. At level 8 for Vampire and level 9 for Lich, it's a little bit more creativity involved in deciding how to use your skills and spells most appropriately, as well as careful routing. Just like a couple levels gives you enough survivability to be able to withstand much more of the abuse that it can throw at you. But assuming that you're willing to put the time into the routing work, then level 9 is very safe for this pass-through. And you can do it at much lower levels if you're feeling daring. I would say level 7 is about the lowest you want to try going in there, and you'll end up at level 8 for Lich, assuming that you get enough of the good encounters. That means you're not going to have a guarantee of being able to survive Lich's Ice 2, but he rarely does the max damage on it. So here we go. Let's see, for example, Kalandan's HP totals 141 and 140, so they're on very, very good pace here. I've got no concerns about them reaching 161, which is the magic number needed to survive Ice 2 guaranteed. Lich's Ice 2 can go up to 160 damage. So as long as they've got 161 plus, then I don't have to worry about the mages dying on the first turn before they get to cast their Fyras. Go ahead, sleeping bag past there, and then one more down at the south before we reach Elfland again. And I actually keep the RNG running up until I reach Earth Cave here. That was part of a lot of planning for this, to try to eliminate hard resets wherever I could. Hard power is slower than a soft reset. You have to turn the console on and off, you have to press reset to get to title screen clearing and so on. There's just more steps involved. There's also more opportunities for the cart to get wiped. So you want to try to avoid that whenever you can, for kind of obvious reasons. Alright, so Power Staff has been sold. I'm going to go ahead and pick up some supplies here. We need 4 gold needles, which is the original version of the soft potion. I'll also pick up 1 house or cottage here to get my spell charges back when we're at the vampire. There's our first gold needle. 2, 3, and 4, and cottage. Now the gold needles are for the ice cave section of the game. Just turns out that there is no other places to buy them that you're going past until you reach there. So Melman doesn't have an item shop for story reasons. Crescent Lake's got an item shop, and it even has a spare space in it, but it doesn't sell gold needles for some reason. I have never understood why they didn't put gold needles there, because that's the part of the world which actually needs them. Would have made a lot of sense for Crescent Lake to stock them. But instead I have to go and buy them in advance there. Because of that, I can't get my fast spells right there in that trip. I don't go into the town of Melmond. It doesn't really have anything useful for this party right now, other than the inn. The town of Melmond has a worse weapon shop than the Elfland one. Elfland selling the silver or mithril sword is probably a bad decision. They actually took that out in the remakes, realizing that that was kind of an overpowered item to have at that point. But the best sword that you can get at Melmond is a long sword. A couple points of attack worse, although it is cheaper than the mithril sword is. The armor shop, unless you have a white or black mage or thief, you probably don't care about, because the silver armlet is not very good compared to its value for the true melee classes. The fighters have better defense with the iron armor, and the chainmail that you had back at Kunea is still perfectly fine for the red mages. It's going to have worse evade than the silver armlet would, but the chainmail was 80 gold and the silver armlet is 5,000, so that's a really big price to spend for a few percentage points of dodge rate. I mean, if you do want every chance of surviving, it is fairly good to dodge things. It especially helps you avoid getting paralyzed by undead monsters. Here we go. Earth Elemental. I'm going to fight 2 of these guys. Now, this is making up for skipping a 3rd loop of mummies, which was my original strategy. I've actually gone back and forth a little bit between mummies and Earth Elementals about which is the better approach. And it really depends on all the routing that you have on the way here. So if you've got very few stopping points going down to Earth Cave, you can actually save time with this setup. Because I get a bullfight, which is good XP, I get the Earth Elementals, and I get another decent fight on the way out sometimes. It'll all depend on whether or not I get a good number of ogres and grogers in that combo. I want at most 1 groger for it to be worth my time. The information coming up is 1 to 4 grogers plus 0 to 2 ogres in it. And so you have some that are just going to be too slow relative to the XP. I do need a little bit of experience, though, to make sure I get my level 9. 2 grogers. Well, we'll go ahead and see if Blizzard is going to help at all here. So they do have a lot better magic defense than the ogres do, so the chances of them actually dying to these ice spells is much lower. But it can happen. We need like a good roll for this one as well. Nope. 120 damage there was 12 short. Alright, so we're going to cottage up here, get our spell charges back. That does give us 2 charges for each of the mages for the trip down here. Unfortunately, they're already spoken for, so I can't get any easy fights on undead. Unless we get lucky with some of the battles. So I need 2 casts of Fire 2 or Fyra for the vampire fight, and then 2 casts of Thundara for the Pisco demons. And it just so happens that sometimes, you know, you'll get lucky with the damage rolls and only need 1 of them, and then I can go and kill some images on the way out. That's always a nice bit of experience points for free, saving me one of the ogre fights in the overworld if I happen to be short on my experience points for it. But for this party, because they're so good on their HP totals for both of my mages, I could actually go into Earth Cave for the second trip at level 8, get level 9 on the way down, and probably be okay. It would basically mean I would not have one of my Fire 2s on each mage, and so I wouldn't be able to have any Panic Fire 2s for undead fights, but I would have 161 by the time I got to Lich from my HP. Ooh boy, that's a lot of gargoyles. Guys are not particularly dangerous, but they do come in large packs, meaning that this is a rather slow battle to run away from. So one of the things that you can't do much about, even in the late game, turn order is something that is fairly close to random. It's a little bit biased towards the enemies, but it's actually not impacted at all by your levels or statistics. Go ahead and put on the Coral Sword, got the door glitch. Door glitch there that you see the second door being drawn is something that can happen if you're in the menu as you're walking through doors like that. Basically just a visual effect that for some reason I get very rarely, but Friesel can do it like every time. I guess he just has the timing for it down. Let's just go ahead and swap Ace and... I probably didn't need to swap them. I was gonna say let's swap Ace and Bill, but I don't have any treasure chest pickups for a while. I've already got my Coral Sword on. Is the weapon weakness system broken in this version too? Yes. So all of the bugs for gameplay mechanics in the NES version are also bugs for the Famicom version. They did not fix any gameplay bugs between the two that I can think of. Wonder Swan Color was the first version that had the gameplay mechanics really fixed, and that's because they pretty much wrote it from scratch. So Nasir's code was used for NES, Famicom, and MSX. And then for Wonder Swan, they threw it out and rewrote it, and that's the basis for all of the later ports for like PlayStation and GBA. I want to say that they did some major rewrites again for PlayStation Portable, but it might have just been the menu system, and that's when they introduced the bug with equipment glitching in PSP, which is another really big game-breaking glitch. I would probably enjoy running the PSP version, except for the fact that it would be a custom category to not have the equipment glitch. There you go. These guys, which you know as images, are called Wraiths here in the Japanese version. And I think the Wraiths are called Spectres, and the Spectres are called Geists. It's a really confusing mix-up between all of the monsters that I normally have undead for. Okay, that should be enough healing. We're going to go ahead and take this vampire down with Abandon. So if we get some good rolls here, this could actually be a one-shot battle. 178 is the most you can do with the fire spell, and he only has 156 hit points. 55, that is not enough to one-shot him. There we go, 92. Unfortunately, because I did use both of my fires, I don't have a free one left over for undead monsters. There we go, Star Ruby obtained. Now, these Pisco Demons really are not that much easier than they were in Marsh Cave. We've gotten a couple of levels, which means some more hit points, but they're still about as powerful. So as you can see here, you want to finish them off rather quickly before they destroy your party. That's why I do cast the double Thundaras at them. Ooh, damn, might have gotten one shots if we had let him go first. Actually, 78 would not have done it. So he would have been short on that one in the bottom left. Save the last cure just in case I needed it for something. Now, on the way out, I do have a bullfight upstairs. I'm going to have to skip all of the undead here. So these are the battles where, if I had a Fyra left over, I could get some free XP from them, because they pretty much die in one Fyra. Also mean I wouldn't have to deal with the can't runs. It's a really scary fight once you have a couple people stun locked. There you go. Alright, Bat, let's see if you get out of my way in time. So you kind of have to push bats around in a few spots. Almost always when I'm going through the run here, I've got very few steps that I can afford to burn. Which means dodging around NPCs like bats in dungeons is pretty inadvisable. Now the ones that are in like one tile wide quarters, you can't do anything about those anyway. But even if it's looking like a relatively clear path around, you have to make some very careful decisions about whether it makes sense to cut across. Like right there, I want to stay back just so that I don't force him unnecessarily to walk up. Getting a bat stuck in this corridor is real slow, having to push him all the way through. You can see all of these tiles all the way up to here. It'd be one step at a time waiting for that bat to move. Why are bats even in this game anyway? Well, except for our good friend Out of Bounds Bat, I wish they weren't. The bats are so frustrating. Alright, one more round on Minotaur here. So Minotaurus or Bull is a pretty good monster upgrade-wise compared to the plain Ogre for fighting. So just a little bit more HP and damage, but significantly more experience. Now let's see what we have for level 9. 167, you're great. Dan, 164, you're great as well. So yeah, no problems at all with getting their HP over 160 for the Lich fight. And it also means I don't have to do any of the Ogre battles outside. So So I'll be running away from the 3 encounters that I will have on the overworld, going to Stardust Cave and back. Okay, throw. Now, if I hadn't gotten level 9, in this case I probably would have gone on without getting the level. But if you need the experience because you're not confident that you're going to have the HP totals, there are some ogre fights built in here while you're doing this walking. So I'm going to skip shadow encounters, I'm going to skip tigers, but ogres are innocuous enough that I go ahead and just leave them in the route. And that way if I need experience I can go ahead and decide to just grab them. Is Peninsula Power too much of a speed rank to be worth, or too much of a time sink to be worth doing in a speed run? Yes. So Peninsula Power has a really long setup phase to it, where you have to go and get a bunch of houses, you walk all the way over to the far side past Provoca, and then all the way back after you're done with the fights. There's a bunch of power off and resets to get it all set up. Basically, if you're only looking for 1 or 2 levels, the mummies are the best way to go. If you want like 4 or so levels, then yeah, Peninsula Power is the best. But you don't need that many to finish the section here. Like with enough good routing for just your walking as well as for what encounters you get into, level 9 is fairly routine for a lot of these trips. I mean, Ordeals is also pretty good at this level. It's only Ice Cave that you kind of regret not having the additional experience points and hit points for. And then after Ice Cave, you go to Gurgur Volcano, where the grinding is much, much faster. That's pretty much true throughout the game. You put off your experience farming until as late as possible whenever you can, because it's almost always going to be faster or safer to grind once you have a spot later on with better equipment and better monsters to go after. Ever thought about making different speedrunning routes for different parties? There's so much stuff that is customized to the characters that you have that it'd be very difficult to get a good route for every single one. So it would always feel like there was a lot of slop in any of the routes that you came up with. Like just coming up with a world record route and a marathon safe route, and just those two is, you know, still like really labor intensive putting it all together, doing the testing and optimization to make it work out. Now I really did have a lot of fun doing the challenge route, so that is something where I might do more of that in the future, where I just get a party assigned to me and I try to figure out a route on the fly as best I can. But I probably wouldn't like have a pre-planned route for every combination. Here we go. We do have Hynodons, or hyenas as they're called in the US version, showing up in the run tonight. This is the only battle they would appear at, and it's optional for them. 0 to 2 that are in that formation. Okay, so we need to cottage and sleeping bag and go on in. Now I don't do a hard reset right there. We have run the RNG all the way from the time that we got out of the Earth Cave, doing that trip over to Stardust and back, and that gets rid of a lot of the early monster encounters. There's a few entry points into Earth Cave here, which allows me to avoid a lot of the nasty monsters down on the 3rd and 4th floors. You've got cockatrices who you definitely want to avoid for their petrification. Spectres and Geists are pretty bad because of their stun lock ability, so they have 3 attacks per round, and that means it's very easy for them to paralyze a person in the party. They come in large packs, and so like if they especially ambush you, most of them are probably going first and taking your party down before you even have a chance to react to them. Also, by the way, those are called cobras here in the Japanese version. Those are asps in the US version, and cobra is not until you get to the more advanced monsters. So cobra is green and asp is pink. I forget what they called Cobras in this one, because I don't have them in the speedrun. There you go, good bat. Now we're on to third floor time. So third and fourth floor, again, have some really bad encounters. And it does take some fancy footwork to avoid them, even with the preparation going into the trip here. So you're going to see me bounce back and forth between the floors, taking advantage of the fact that although they have the same bad encounters, they're not on the same monster groups. So that means that the times in the encounter cycles where those monsters are scheduled to appear are actually different between the floors. Because if I stayed up here, I would get Spectre and Geist. If I went downstairs, I'd get Cockatrice. And it seems like there's no way to solve that dilemma. But downstairs, Spectre Geist turns into Troll. And up here, Cockatrice turns into Image. No bat. That's right, this is going to be where we're going to see the real Beholder. So get ready for that in a few splits. We still need to get through Lich and through Zombies, though, first. Any other sprite changes besides Beholder and Medusa? I can't think of any besides those monsters. And it's the same sprite change for both Medusa and Medusa, I believe. At least the same pixels that are covered up. It's probably different color for the outfits because it's just the same sprite with different color palettes for the swaps on it. Who would have expected that? Ogres and Grogers beating Dan up. Okay, make sure all my equipment is correct here. Hey, Scav, welcome in. We're gonna go ahead and smash the plate open with the rod that we got from Sarda. And that'll allow me to get down to the 4th floor for doing this encounter skip. Yeah, Ogres never beat Dan up. They beat Ace up all the time, though. Troll is actually kind of tempting to take the fight on, just in case I got a whole bunch of can't runs there. Troll by himself is a fairly easy fight and good experience, but we'll be patient. I might pick up some trolls in the Crescent Lake area. Hey, Germany, you noticed that I just named them Ace, Bill, Calendin? Yep. Turns out you can name them the same thing in between languages. It's beautiful. Although for a real Japanese speedrun, you'd probably just use like I-E-O-O and go across in the vowels or something, just so you've got some way of picking out the sword order. Maybe Akasata. Now, because I did get a chance to strike first here, we're going to get a guaranteed run on that troll battle. I would have rather have saved that for the troll bull combo. There's a fight downstairs here on the 5th floor, which is a lot scarier depending on which monsters show up. 1 to 2 trolls plus 0 to 2 bulls in this formation that I'm going to have. So they can actually do some significant damage if they put their minds to it. Especially like an ambush. I do not want to see an ambush on him. Alright, 2 trolls in an ambush. Well, at least there's no bulls. Trolls are pretty tough because they do have 3 attacks per round, and they do decent damage with it. It's like having 6 ogres on the screen right there. But we made it through. It's time to fight our first of the 4 elemental fiends. Go ahead and get you healed up. You're probably good. Let's do it. Now, Lich, weak to fire, as all undead are, makes it so that you can actually do this as a 1-round fight if you get really lucky here. Only has 400 hit points. Oh man, Ace is paralyzed there. They decided not to do Ice 2, but Paralyzation is pretty bad. He didn't paralyze a mage, though, which is good. That means that we'll be able to do another round of Fire 2s here. Does this game have any kanji in it at all? I don't think there's kanji anywhere for the entire game. I have to go back and check to see if there's like anything they put into like the credits at the very end for basic kanji, but I'm fairly certain it's just hiragana and katakana. There we go, Lich is down. I'm gonna go ahead and start setting up the encounter manipulation for the walkover to ordeals. This is the longest manipulation setup in the entire game because of how difficult it is to get a good entryway into ordeals. Ordeals just has so many bad monster formations that you need to dodge around. There are very few spots where you can realistically go in on that battle and make it all the way to the end without running into something awful. Whether it's gargoyles or mancats or sorcerers or medusas, there's always something kind of around the corner waiting for you to slip up on your steps just a little bit. How much difference is there in the Japanese speedrun? Well, there's the memory corruption glitch, which I'm not going to use for this category. That's the big difference between Japanese and English, is you can actually exploit it here with the Japanese character set for names. But for a regular playthrough, there is only minor changes, most of them around menus and around graphics. Very little that's actually changed gameplay-wise. Alright, we'll see if we go ahead and need to get the troll and bull fights. We'll probably get them. So I do not want to have to do any healing before ordeals. And so if I do get some bad encounters here, I just go and fire them down and pick up the in trip at Crescent Lake to make up for this. So what am I actually manipulating for these encounters? I can manipulate where battles take place. I can't control like every single step, but I know where they're going to be. So it's all planned out in advance. I know what the formations are, but the formations don't tell you exactly how many monsters are going to show up. For example, right there, that was 1 to 2 trolls plus 0 to 2 bulls. This is going to be 1 to 2 trolls. The next one's going to be 1 to 2 trolls as well. And so there's random elements for how many monsters are going to be there. It's random whether it's going to be first strike, ambush, normal for the start. All of the moves and damage and all of that is random. In fact, Final Fantasy 1's got some of the largest variances in terms of damage that I've ever seen in an RPG. It's incredible what the difference is between a low-end attack and a high-end, for example. A lot of the later games, you pretty much have every single step in a fight planned out, because you know exactly how much damage it's going to do, and sometimes you might get unlucky and need one extra attack or something like that. But Final Fantasy 1, it's all improv inside battle itself. There is a value that's stored on your cart, which is continuously updated, and that is controlling what the battle RNG is. And in addition to being influenced by all the actions that occur in battle, it is incremented every 2 frames. So you would have to be pretty much frame perfect for every single command input for it to be able to manipulate. And I can do that for like the first 3 battles in the game, but I'm going to be pretty quickly lost after that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get 10 cabins here, aka tents in this version. One of the more confusing name changes. I should be good on antidotes and heal potions here, so I'm going to go ahead and just end after that and go to the armor shop next. So we're going to go and get mithril gear for both of our fighters. This is going to be a really significant upgrade in terms of defensive power, except for the body armor. The iron body armor is actually better absorb-wise, although mithril would be better for evade. It's much, much better for evade, in fact. Mithril shield. Mythril Gauntlet. And Mythril Helmet. Is no encounter manipulation a category for this game? No, because nobody knows how to reliably... Well, I shouldn't say that. There's no way to prove somebody is not doing encounter manipulation, just with the knowledge that's involved with it. So, because it's so easy to do, and you wouldn't have like a really good explanation for it, it's not like a dedicated category. There is a version though that is a single segment, which means that you're not allowed to reset or power the console off during the game. That constrains your ability to do some of these manipulations, because resetting is a way to get more favorable encounter groups or to skip past encounters, both of which are very helpful. The difference between a run like this RTA versus a single segment run is like 40 minutes. It's hard to say exactly just because truly optimizing this game is just really, really impossible. Is there potential for the RNG hardware to be hacked? I mean, to some extent, we trust people not to do shady things with speedruns, but since you do have predictable RNG, for the encounters, like you could prove that somebody was cheating if they had encounters where they weren't supposed to, or the encountered groups were not correct. For the battle RNG, it would be much harder to check. In theory, you could. There are certain things that cannot happen in battles just because there's only 256 values that the RNG seed can take, which means there's only 256 possible outcomes for rounds. And that means you might try to craft something that was not actually possible if you were hacking the RNG. Hey, Final Fantasy, welcome in. As well as Brusquely. Go ahead and burn off my last sleeping bag there. This is the last encounter I need to skip for ordeals, and so rather than having to do a whole bunch of manipulation at the castle itself, I did all of it while I was walking there, along the way to Crescent Lake and along the sailing trip here. And it actually is pretty touchy because you're changing back and forth between different encounter rates. Ocean's got a much lower encounter rate than the overworld does. So if you had like a different path for walking, it would probably not work out for these steps. Alright, and we get the minimum number of mummies here. 3 to 7 mummies are going to be in each of these formations. Because I did get the monsters along the Crescent Lake area, I could go through here with very low XP in the castle itself and still get level 10. I just hope that we don't get too many rounds like this where people get put to sleep, so that we can get through these mummies relatively fast. The next battle is Zombles. Also a big swing depending whether we get 1 or 3 of them. If I get 2 or 3, I'll probably do a double fire too, just to make sure that it's a easier battle. Zombles do hit really hard. Now, the quick trick to memorizing how to get through this place is always the bottommost pillar in the room that you're in, so it's a very easy pattern to figure out where to go. It's not like you have to have lots of careful study to remember all of these. Like, maybe this is the worst one because it's ambiguous about what bottom is going to be. You can't see all of the pillars by the time the first one scrolls on the screen. Alright, Dan, give me a good fire too and we will save cows. Nope. Looks like we need cows after all. So that leaves me 1 fire 2 for the second Wiz Mummy fight, which is going to be up on the top floor. And then I'll have 2 fire 2s left for the Zombie Ds at the end. Zombie Ds are fairly challenging, so you want to have at least 2 fire 2s plus the Zeus Gauntlet on hand to take them down. When's the last time I did a Famicom run? Not like amazing differences in splits, but I know I can save at least 5 minutes. Assuming I get a decent run on this. Go ahead and grab the heal staff there. I just simply haven't done as many, and so whereas the US versions kind of got optimized for very, very good luck in most of the segments, the Famicom has got a couple of segments which just had poorer RNG compared to what I would take in a regular run. Like, I think in theory this should be about 5.5 minutes slower than US because of the timing difference. And that would put it around like a 3:38 as a reasonably, very well optimized time. And probably like a 3:43 as a more average time. There we go. Gauntlets, or they turned to the US version. Zeus gauntlets are a really good item. Just go ahead and throw away chainmail here, swap mithril mail. You need ice brand, heal staff is gonna go down there, coral sword is gonna go down there. Oops. Coral sword should. Actually, no, I can leave it like this. So you're gonna have mithril sword, ice brand, coral sword. I should have put that on Cal instead, but this will save me some swapping later on when we get to Ice Cave. You need a heal, and let's do zombie Ds. Yeah, Japanese timing from power on means that you're going to include the time that you spend doing character creation at the start, and you've got the entire ending credits to sit through as well, which is like 5 minutes. Okay, Bill Callandan here getting level 10. Ace, I might want to pick up level 10 for him. He should be really close to it. Level 10 would give him some more hit points for the Ice Cave. Oh, he'll be fine, he'll be fine. Look at that beautiful Beholder graphic coming up. Means we're getting ready to go into that dreaded Ice Cave very soon here. I guess we can start tenting now. Okay, an Ice Cave, for people that haven't seen it, is the hardest dungeon for speedrunning. Probably for casual play as well, I'd say is the hardest. A lot of people get hung up on Marsh Cave at the start, but then Ice Cave is the next really big stumbling block. And for speedrunning, Ice Cave versus the final dungeon are both really, really challenging. But the final dungeon, Temple Fiends Revisited, has a lot more options for recovery. Whereas with Ice Cave, you're often left with just a very, very beaten up party, maybe even only 2 or 3 party members alive to make your way through there if things go badly. Why does Japanese timing include power on the credits? I mean, it's just the custom for the speedrunning community there. I think a large influence is the fact that they do a lot of broadcasts on Nico Video, where you basically pay by the minute for streaming. And so actually including every single part of the game makes a lot more sense, because determining whether or not you're going to go over your like 30-minute credit for it is going to matter for things like the ending. And I guess most like serious Nico streamers that are kind of the equivalent of Twitch partners basically have donations in the community coverage, so they don't pay directly. But if you're just a basic streamer on Nico that wants to archive your videos, then you do have to pay for the time that you spend broadcasting. Hey, Princess Rescuer, welcome in. Run's going pretty good so far. There's not nearly as many runs on the Famicom version as the NES version, so things like gold splits are not that significant, but good to see that I'm at least on decent pace. Alright, Bill getting us out of there. I would have been okay with failing to run and then getting probably the level for Ace right there, but I'll also take a run to end the battle. So why these names? In the English version, Ace, Bill, Calendan, A, B, C, D are used to have alphabetical sorting. Because this game helpfully reorders your party every time they've got status elements or die, you need to have a quick way of telling them apart. When you're just looking at the order menu, all you have is the character sprite, which since we have 2 fighters and 2 red mages, we can't distinguish them, and the names. So that's why you have to pick something that lets you sort them easily. Beholder different in any way except for the sprite? No, it is just a graphical difference. Oh, Cal, so close to wiping out that Piranha pack. You almost had it. Hey, Mecha Jeff, welcome in. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and cottage here to get our spell charges back. And whenever I recover spell charges like this in the overworld, you see me double save because of a bug that causes you to get your spell charges back after the game has already been saved. Which means if I have to reset, for example, in this case, to get encounter manipulation done or something bad happened in the dungeon, then I would lose those spell charges, and that would be really sad. Those are 3,000 gold pop, so you can't afford to carry any spares. Now, the reason for those manipulations, got rid of 2 cockatrice mummy battles. Unfortunately, there's 3 at the start, so we still have 1 to deal with. Okay, Ace is down. Used up 1 of my soft potions there. That is why by 4, though. You can lose 3 people in that battle, and then 1 person at the eye if he uses the glance ability, or the beholder. Means 4 is exactly enough to get through the dungeon. Ooh, 6 race. I think I'm gonna go ahead and fight these guys just for the XP, and we'll fire them. I'll sometimes do this if it's a little bit dangerous to get through the encounter normally with running. With Cal getting paralyzed, though, that does make things real nasty. Okay, so I got all but 2 of them. Let's see if we can finish them off without another Fire 2 being used. Whew, okay, should be good. Should be good. Again, those are all mixed up name-wise from the US version, so those are specters here. Which we call race, and the race are called images. That should be enough healing for right now. I want to kind of mix up a little bit about how much curing I do so that we don't do all of our cures with 1 person and the other person dies, causing me to lose all 6 of them. At the same time, I also don't want to over-cure, because when we get to the Beholder, instant death, well, you know, it's instant, so having full HP doesn't really help you. Oh, good. Bill getting us out of there was a really big move. I did have Dan with Fire 2 ready to go, but that would have been his second Fire 2 out of 3. And he is pretty useful to have those in the late game, just in case you run into a bunch more Wraiths. We've been getting pretty bad luck. Those are maximum encounters for Wraiths and images. Actually, I didn't need to Gauntlet here because that was a chance to strike first. We just had Cal run instead. Okay, now we got for Giant and for Wolf. So Frost Giants and Frost Wolves, oh good, no Frost Wolves showing up, are one of the scarier things here because of the Frost Wolves Frost Breath attack. 24 to 96 damage to the entire party is a lot. 0 to 2 at random though, so you might, like in this case, get none of them, which is a pleasant surprise when it happens. And the Ice Gigas just punches you really hard, so he's actually a lot easier to deal with than the Frost Wolf Breath. Okay, Cal, finish him off. There you go. 2 more of those formations coming up in the rest of the dungeon here. I scheduled all of them to happen before the battle with the Beholder. That way, I never have to do that battle with only 3 party members, unless something goes really, really wrong. Okay, Okay, Flame Sword means I can pass that. Mithril Sword down to you. Let's go ahead, heal up. Because we've got the trap tile here. One of the scarier spots right here. Up to 9 monsters and a chance to ambush you, meaning that they could do lots and lots of damage. Alright, made it through. I think Dan probably should get a little bit of healing there. 135 is very dangerous for the Frost Wolf encounter, especially because I do have like 7 steps right there of ice damage to take. Whenever you're walking on those squares, you're taking 1 HP damage to the entire party, but it's always a safe square for both ice as well as lava. That means you're not going to get an encounter, and it doesn't push the encounter step count any further forward. Basically, if you walked on safe squares forever, then you would be indefinitely delaying when the next battle would take place. There goes all my cure spells. So anything after this is going to be heal potions. I've got 40,000 gil waiting for me in this bottom left-hand room. Which is a really nice payoff at this point in the game. You are going to need a lot of money in the mid-game. There's one stretch where I need to buy the bottle for 50,000, a whole bunch of pro rings, which are 20,000 apiece. So like usually I get 3 for 60,000 total. I need to buy the warp spell at 8,000 apiece for the mages. It's just like all of a sudden, after seemingly having cash coming out of your ears, you need to just like dump it all into a bunch of shopping. And so that helps me get ready for that. If I didn't have that money, it'd be tough to make it up, although I do have 20,000 I could pick up at Cardia pretty easily. It would cost me about a minute or so to get that. And, or I would get another 20,000 if I had to skip those in the bottom left. Maybe at that point I could go and get the swords out of Temple of Fiends. That would be like 7,000 gold. Oh, that would probably be at least a minute solid, because you have to get 2 trap tile encounters plus however many encounters you'd have naturally. Probably 1 or 2 on that. Alright, our bones ambushing us. Well, luckily we do have a lot more defense than we did back at Marsh Cave. We can still hit pretty hard, as you see right there. But usually their regular attacks are not going to be nearly as damaging. More money, another sleeping bag, and then finally an ice shield, which is a really important item for hopefully preventing paralysis. But we need to get through Beholder first, and look at that beautiful Beholder artwork. So wonderful to behold. Alright, come on, battle, kill him! Don't let him get a move in! There we go, no Beholder points. I mean, there's no points in general because it's not doing fantasy, but it would have been a 0-point night for him. Go ahead and pick up the floater. I'm going to put the Ice Shield on Ace, and what this is doing is... Let's see, does anybody else need healing? Probably Ace should get 2 potions here. Giving him resistance to fire. Now, fire is internally also what these guys have coded up for their melee attack element. And melee attack elements actually don't matter except in one special case, which is your chance of applying status effects. If you're resistant to the melee attack element, then the status effect can be blocked. That is why sorcerers are so nasty, because they do not have an element associated with their death status element. And so nothing stops it, not even the ribbon. Whereas here you've got fire, which is something I can actually get an element for, blocking paralysis. Now, even though I say it blocks it, there's a 3 in 256 chance that they'll get a critical hit for applying the status element. And in that case, it does not check what your resistances are. It just goes right through it. So in this battle here with the race, I guess, specters in this version, I could still get paralyzed, and that would be a shame. I've actually lost a run to that, where I was stun locked at this last encounter of the cave through an ice shield. Beholder looked very happy. He does look very happy in this version. Beholder is the Gigantus of the Final Fantasy. There we go. Ice cave complete. That wasn't too bad. Go ahead and skip past 2 encounters there. That gets most of the nasty encounters out of the way. There is a battle with Hydras right here. Hydras do more damage and are more likely to ambush me than the Caribou, but not really a big threat. The Gators and Ochos are more likely to be harmful at this point in the game. Sacrifice Dan to the Dark Gods to celebrate world records. I mean, if I did that every time I get a world record, you know, that would probably be not enough Dan sacrifices to go around. He is sacrificed almost every single playthrough. By the way, Caribou actually called Piranha here, so it makes a lot of sense about what their sprite looks like as well as the placement. The Carib was what we determined was a, I think, Portuguese name for Piranha, used in like one specific region, so they did have some creativity in the translation. Same thing with Agama, which is evidently a red-colored lizard, and so somebody came up with that idea of using them for fire lizard. Even Dan getting the runs. Look at that. Good job, Dan. You're a helper here tonight. Zarkin, do I speak Japanese or do I have the game memorized? Both. So I can speak Japanese fast enough for simple text like this to read it, but it's always better to have knowledge about what the menu structure is going to be like so that you're not doing as much searching for things. Like even if you're playing in English, you don't want to be fumbling around menus looking for items. Now with that, we've obtained our wonderful airship, allowing us to bypass many encounters worth of sailing, and as well getting to visit Bahamut in his unnecessarily long hallways. Seriously, why did Bahamut need the hallways this long? It's just kind of off-putting. You could have made them half as long and still have had a really classy place. Did I learn Japanese for the purposes of speedrunning? No, I knew Japanese a while back. Speaking of Japanese, having an entire room full of crosses is much more acceptable there. Whereas in the US version, all of these crosses got replaced by candelabras. So I call this the place where all of the censored crosses for all Nintendo games of all time are being stored. Just in Bahamut's basement down here. In the remakes, they kind of half uncensored it, so it kind of looks like a cross, but it's actually a sword hilt. So they have a bunch of swords stuck in the ground. It's kind of like towing the line between actually reverting the change and leaving it censored. All the splits have gotten better. I haven't done that many Famicom runs, so you'll definitely have better splits on average than you would on most nights. Although this has been a decent run in addition to that. Like 159 coming out of, or 158 coming out of Cardia is really good. Do some shopping. It's time to buy 99 potions. So I should only need about 60 of these things. Maybe 65 or so. And we do need 99 for Gurkha Volcano because there is a whole bunch of healing while I am going and grinding on some fire lizards. Should also get the Ruse spell before I forget. I can either get Ruse here or at the Temple of Fiend Revisited trip into Canaria. And by custom, I always like to do it here so I don't forget it. We'll be back for more heal potions later on as well. I needed 99 for both this trip as well as for Temple of Fiends. They're both fairly long, challenging dungeons. Much more of the heal potions, though, for this trip are because of the Fire Lizard grind. Every time they use the heat skill, it does drain a whole bunch of HP. Whereas Temple of Fiends is just very, very punishing going through there. I think we've gotten about 40 so far, so maybe about 25 more to go. Now, the reason I do it here at Canary is because this is actually the fastest item shop in the game. It's only got 3 items in it, which means it paints the screen very slightly faster for redraws, allowing me to hit the cursor for the next one. It's locked out entirely while it's repainting. So having 3 versus 4 versus 5 does save you a few frames every time. And over the course of 220 items to purchase, that adds up to, I think, around 10 to 15 seconds, depending on how accurate you are hitting the A button. A lot of rhythm involved rather than mashing, given the amount of time that it spends locked out. There we go. Cannot purchase anymore. Let's go up here for the top. This is usually better NPC walking up at the top. Oops. We need cure spells for everybody. Not cure spells. Blink for Ace. Blink for Bill. Blink for Cal. And Blink for Dan. This is the Ruse spell, which increases your evasion. Having evasion is very, very important here. Hey, King Kong, welcome in. I'm going to go ahead and get my encounters set back to 0, so we're going to get the trip to the inn right here. And then next we'll head on down to Elfland. Elfland's got Cura. About to say Curaga, but that is not something that we actually have enough levels for in this run until much later on. Also, by the way, we're going past Link's grave in this version. It's Erdrick in the NES version, and then Link for both the original Famicom as well as for the remakes. Alright, Cura for everybody. Go pick up Haste and Ice 2 here at the Black Magic Shop on the way out. This is my last time that I need to go back to Elfland. And most of this spell purchasing is just because you cannot get these spells before the night class change. Once you do, though, even though they don't have spell slots yet, they're able to go ahead and do all the shopping for them. There we go. Haste for you, haste for Dan. Blizzara for Cal, Blizzara for Dan, and we are done with that. On to Gurgur Volcano. Hey Celia, welcome in. Alright, so let me focus here for a second. Gonna go ahead and burn one encounter off. I also made sure that I had no sleeping bags or cottages in my inventory. The reason is because I want to force the heal potions to be in the bottom left-hand corner. Now I have to do a whole bunch of menuing accessing those heal potions, and the bottom left-hand corner is one of the fastest spots to access them. Bottom left-hand corner means I could just press up on the D-pad to get my cursor there, and given how many I need to use in a row, the fast access does add up rather quickly. You can also have them in the bottom right, but that means getting rid of all of your pure and soft potions, and that would be really tough. You can't use them unless somebody actually needs the status symbol fixed, and you can't sell them. So you have to somehow buy exactly the right number at earlier parts of the game. be faster to head east from Elfland to the volcano. I know I looked at that at one point. It was because I used to go up to Melmon there, and I don't think I've ever changed it since then. I used to buy the warp spell before I came into Greater Volcano, and now I buy it afterwards. By the way, I hope you're enjoying this at home with the beautiful 60 frames per second of Twitch quality. You can see this sprite or the background flicker real hard. And this is actually intentional with the visual effect that the game does to indicate that you're walking on damaged tiles, but boy, is it pretty intense. It's even better in person because the video capture can't quite get it in all of its glory. Now, if you're using transcoding, anything besides source quality, you'll see it at 30 FPS, and so it'll look either solid light or solid dark for long stretches, which is not nearly as fun. Alright, on the way up to my items, I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple of heal staffs just in case I get some free healing here. Every time I can have Dan do something in combat, it's generally a win. His chance of running is just awful. Because of the way that running is worked is bugged, the 4th character slot is only going to have about a 10% chance of running at best. And that means, rather than getting a whole bunch of can't runs with Dan, if you've got 4 party members that need healing, you might as well use the heal staff, assuming that you've exhausted your heal spells to begin with. Heal spells would still be faster than doing this in combat. Yeah, heal 2 is bugged to do too much healing. It actually acts as heal 3 in combat. And there's also a difference between combat versus overworld for heal potions. Inside of battle, they act exactly the same as Cure 1, which is 16 to 31 healing at random. Outside of battle, they give you a constant 30. So that's why I do as much healing with potions as I can outside, so I can get a guaranteed almost max roll on them. You know what I should do? Finish equipping things. So we have Ice Brand going up to you, then going down. Mithril goes down. So Ice Brand, Flame Sword, Mithril Sword. Armor-wise, I want to pass up the Flame Shield, equip the Gauntlet. There we go. Now we're going to fight. So the damage increase that I get for the Ice Sword is pretty significant. You have 3 attacks per round at level 11 with the Ice Brand, whereas it's only 2 attacks per round at level 10 or with any of the other weapons that you have at this point. Oh man, look at that Agma. Or Fire Lizard go. He ambushed me with a critical on Ace and then followed up with a heat skill. He's being an ultra jerk right there. But I will kill him and kill all of his companions as my revenge. We're probably going to get about 40 Fire Lizards to do the grinding here. I'm going to go from level 11, which we just hit on Ace, but we have probably 11 and maybe a little bit of change for the rest of the party already. I'll go up to level 15. Cal and Dan are the ones that need 15. In theory, only one of the mages needs 15 right now, because I could get the rest of the experience for the other mage at Waterfall. But since they have the same amount, they'll both hit 15 at the same time here. No one wants to worry about it. I mean, I guess in theory I could actually end this one battle before 15. Carry gives you almost identical experience to the Fire Lizards. 2472 here for Fire Lizards and 2500 for Merilith, which is the original name that Carry had. Merilith is another one of those references to Dungeons & Dragons. It's actually one of the really early demon types, and it looks identical to the Merilith sprite that you have in Final Fantasy, with the 6 arms and the weapons and the snake body. I don't appreciate having to use heal potions that quickly. Means we're having a slow start to the fire lizards. Now, ideally, you go through here with pretty much no heats and very little damage. But Dan's going to be unprotected for physical attacks. There's just no way around it. There's only silver armor for him at this point. It'd be 50,000 gil to get gold bracelets for the other characters besides the one that I pick up at Ordeals. And that's just too far out of my budget to even consider. It'd be 20,000 at this point to get pro rings, which I could actually think about doing for some of the party. But it would mean a second trip back to Gaia later on. And I want to avoid the backtracking whenever possible. Nice, good fire lizard round. So that's actually one of the possible setups for a stable RNG loop. So again, there's only 206 values for RNG. And that means as long as I'm frame perfect putting in all these fight commands, if I use up exactly 256 values between a pair of battles, it'll get the same battles over again. I'm not going to get it now because I saw that the fire lizard actually got to go in the second one. But there's 2 out of those 256 values that will repeatedly cycle. And that'll continue giving you the same battles over and over, again, as long as you're frame perfect and pick the same commands every time, until you get a level up or you try to heal. Because both of those things are actions that are going to draw additional random numbers. Healing to get the amount of HP recovery that you have, and level ups are used for your HP gain, as well as whether or not you get certain status or certain attribute ups. So you've got, for each level, a fixed amount of attributes that are going to increase, and then a random chance of all the other ones also increasing. So if you want to save scum a whole bunch, you can actually get a perfect level up every time for your characters. Every single attribute, every single time. It would just take a really long time to make it happen. Grinding in Final Fantasy Randomizer, unless you had not turned up the XP and gold totals, you really shouldn't have to do that much grinding in the randomizer. Like most people play it with a fairly accelerated curve for leveling, at which point you can get so many more levels just from the regular encounters walking around that you rarely need to stop. Hey, Srikshaw, any major differences between Famicom and NES? There is a major glitch in the Famicom version, which is banned by this particular category, allowing you to corrupt memory and basically beat the game in 7 minutes. It's not a lot of interesting gameplay, so I do 80% no memory corruption, which makes it fairly similar in style to what you have for the NES version. There's a couple of graphical differences between the two. We went past one of the big ones, which is the beautiful Beholder artwork, which got taken out for NES and all future remakes. There are the Medusas, all the crosses, the churches, and so on that got changed for graphics. The menuing's also changed. They had enough space in Japanese to write out the names of items, so like Ice Brand or Flame Sword or what have you. But the shorter names in English didn't permit that, so they totally redid the menus. The different font, they changed the highlighting for what action or command that you're going to be doing, and they also put in the icons, which are very distinctive now. That was actually something that they came up with for the US version, and it was so good that they persisted doing that for all of the future Final Fantasies. Having like a sword icon if it's a sword, or an axe icon if it's an axe, for example. Well, if you were fighting Agamas, well, I mean, there are no unrunnable Agama formations in the game, so I would probably just run if you got something really, really tough for those. There are actually not even that many locations. There is a few floors here in the volcano where Agamas can show up, and then there's one floor in Temple of Fiends Revisited, Carrie's floor, where you also have them. The ones here are always single Agamas. I would love to be able to fight groups of them. That would be really cool to get just like a whole bunch of them and mow them down with Ice 2 at this point, but alas, only one at a time. And when you get to Temple of Fiends Revisited, there is one formation that has 1 to 4 Agamas, and then one formation which is, I want to say, 1 to 2 red giants plus 0 to 2 Agamas. I have to look up and see exactly what the numbers are, though. Might be 1 to 2 plus 1 to 2. No major rebalancing, that's correct. The first time that they sat down and made significant changes to the gameplay was the WonderSwan Color version. At that point, they basically redid the game from scratch, and they fixed a lot of the combat bugs. So almost everything that we talk about for gameplay mechanic differences is really bugs in the original version that differed from what they intended. As a side effect of fixing the bugs, because most of the bugs actually make the game harder, they had to go back and rebalance things. They started by making the monsters, specifically the bosses, have more hit points. And as they went later and later on, they also put in some ease of use changes, like putting in magic points instead of spell slots, increasing the experience and gold count, and so on. And that made it so easy that they had to continue inflating the monster or boss HP until the point where you get to like GBA and Chaos has got 20,000 HP instead of 2,000. As far as I know, they didn't lose the source code for the rewrite. It's because it was so tangled up for the optimizations for running on the NES. So the NES has an 8-bit processor with a very limited instruction set and very limited memory space. So a lot of the code is dedicated towards very tight optimizations for reusing code segments, for handling register juggling, so that you can deal with the fact that the processor's only got the AX, Y, and stack registers. It's got a whole bunch of paging code in there, and all that stuff just complicates trying to do a port. You'd have to rip it all out anyway, and if you've got the design documents and you know there's a whole bunch of bugs in it, you might as well do it from scratch. I mean, the graphics are gonna have to be redone anyway, the sound's gonna have to be redone, so we're just talking about like the gameplay engine at that point. Alright, so we're a little bit more than halfway through our Fire Lizard grind here. So level 13, which we hit a while back, plus 3 Fire Lizards is the halfway mark for the mages. Each of the levels takes you about 1 Fire Lizard more XP to get, so as you're going up from like 11, 12, 13, 14 to 15, you just basically mentally add 1 or so for the delta. Later on, once you're into the high teens and then into the 20s, the experience curve actually starts getting rather steep, so that it's hard to get to very high levels in this game unless you want to spend a lot of time grinding. That's why you can get to Temple of Fiends and have a very quick time getting up to like 18 or 19 in this route. But if you wanted to get even to the mid-20s, you're talking about maybe like a couple minutes per level. And then late 20s, it's 15, 20 minutes a level. And then into the 30s, it's starting to be like half an hour per level. It's very, very much a slowdown. Of course, level 30 should be more than enough to stop chaos with a reasonable party, so you should really never have to do that. I'd probably recommend somewhere in the mid-20s for most casual play to do the final boss fights. Especially if you got a lot of fighters and red mages or black belts. They all have a decent amount of HP to survive things. White mage, black mage, thief, on the other hand, high 20s might be a better choice. Especially thieves. Now, the reason for doing the grind at this particular spot, one more level to go, is that we need to get the warp spell for Cal and Dan for the next few dungeons to save a bunch of backtracking. If you've got 1 cast of warp at Waterfall, you can avoid walking all the way out through that entire dungeon after picking up the cube. And you need 2 casts at Sea Shrine once you get up to the Mermaid floor to get back down to the ground floor. That means at least one mage coming out of here, because I do waterfall first, and then getting both mages to that level 15 at the end of the waterfall. Which there are a couple of good opportunities to get monsters in there, but you're not guaranteed to have anything that's worth more than a single Agama at a reliable pace. So if you want levels, you might as well get as much as you can here before going to Waterfall. After Waterfall, though, you'll see me pretty much stick to 1.5 Agamas worth of experience for all the battles. So I'll be running away from things that are actually a decent XP total, but I'm just trying to continue pushing on until very late in the game. At Temple Fiends Revisit it, you'll get like 2.5 Agamas worth of experience per battle, so you can pretty quickly level up for the fights there. And I finished the Thief, White Mage, Black Mage run from the other day. Yes, I did that in a single sitting. It was about 7 hours long. And I finished, I think I want to say, at 23 for my level. It was rough. Very, very rough for both the beginning of the game and the end of the game. The middle of the game was pretty good. Like, once I had enough XP and gold to get Lit 2 for the Black Mages, we could do the Marsh Cave, Earth Cave, Ordeals, and Ice Cave pretty well. I couldn't do the Agama grind because of the party setup. Like, we just didn't have enough melee damage, but instead what I did was grind on the eyes back at the Ice Cave, which is a couple minutes slower. That's why we do Agamas here in this route rather than do the eyes instead. It's just because it takes time to go back there a second time. But that was a better choice for that party. Sea Shrine was not bad. Mirage Tower and Sky Castle were surprisingly not bad, although Tiamat was pretty scary. And then Temple of Fiends was rough. Temple of Fiends, you have to first of all deal with Lich and his nuke spell. That party, I think, the first time I went in there, I had 308 as my highest HP total. Nuke can do up to 400, so every single person could have been killed by that. But somehow we got through Nuke. We beat Carrie and Kraken. I got the Mazmune. And on Tiamat, we almost wiped. So I aborted out after Mazmune. I got a couple more levels and then went back down and was able to beat Chaos in the first try. What can I do with 2 red mages that I couldn't do with just 1? The big thing with 2 red mages is that if one of them dies, the other one can still cast life. There is no way to revive dead characters in this game except for the Clinic/Church or a life spell. And with no Phoenix Downs and life spells being rather hard to come by, that means you have to have a backup. In this case, my 2 red mages could do it. You could also do red mage plus white mage as another way of getting it, but that's the primary purpose in the marathon safe route, is to have a backup in case your red mage is the one that gets targeted. Like, Kraken can one-shot the mage. Like, there's just no way to stop that from happening at the Kraken Revisited fight. Tiamat could one-shot a mage. Even Carrie could if she got a really good hit in. It's also nice for other parts because I can have 2 people casting fast. That means for all the boss fights from here on out, I'll have both of my fighters fasted on the first round. That way they do a lot more damage for all of those battles. Early game, it also helps to have 2 red mages because you do more damage to have double fires or Fyras or double Thundaras. Those do add up quite a lot, as well as being another good backup spot. Like, if one of the red mages dies or gets paralyzed, the other one can still kill the boss or kill the undead that is threatening the party. Makes the first couple of dungeons much, much easier to have 2 spellcasters that can have offensive spells. But for world record strats, you actually have a slightly different setup. You actually have Fighter, Black Mage. Oh, look, we're done. And that means no backups, in fact, no life spells at all. And so many more things that this party could shrug off and recover from. The world record party just is, game over at that point and has no way to recover other than resetting and doing the dungeon a second time. The flip side, though, is with only 3 characters in the party, you get levels much faster. And that does help out a lot to have a higher level fighter than what I have. Go ahead and get my Minotaur fight. This is scheduled to happen before Marilith so that I can get everybody healed up here, and I want to heal up a second time afterwards. Alright, should be good for hit points. This is generally a fairly fast fight if things go well. So fight, fight, haste, and haste. Haste is doubling the number of attacks per round that my fighters have, so they weren't patient enough to wait for them. But if they did, they'd have 6 attacks there instead of 3. And C's only got 600 hit points, which means if you get really good rolls, it's probably like a 2 or 3 round fight. If you do things like this and don't get the haste off in time, it can be 4. Whew boy, Dan getting punished there. She's got another spell in between her next fire cast, so it goes Fire 2 Dark, Fire 2 Dark, Fire 2 Dark, I think like Lock 2 or something else, and then an Ace spell. She's got a really weird spell list before she cycles around. It looks like it's just 2 spells repeating, but it's actually 8 custom spells. Here we go, 2 Fiends complete. At least you didn't one-shot Dan. I mean, we've got bosses that are going to do that later on. That's Kraken's job, really. Alright, remember that warp spell we're getting? I need to go buy that now. I was going to stay at the inn here rather than the inn at Gaia, because this is a couple hundred gold cheaper. It's actually rather tight on money at this point. Gotta make sure that I've got every opportunity to afford the 3 pro rings and bottle, plus the 2 warp spells. I will have enough by a few thousand, but it'll be close. I want Cal to get Telepo, and Dan to get Telepo, which is warp. And as long as I got 105,000 there after the warp spells, we're good. There's a trick that only works in the original version of the game, going ahead and landing directly on top of the caravan. By original version, I mean NES/Famicom. That's a bug that they fixed later on. It's conditional about whether the caravan exists at all. So once you've done the Axial quest here, the caravan actually disappears as a normal desert tile. But since it has that check on it to see whether or not the caravan should exist, it's not flagged as being unlandable like every other desert in the game. Okay, so Ace needs to sell... Oops, not the helmet. Needs to sell the gauntlets. There we go. Cal needs to sell Silver Shield and Silver Shield. Go ahead and get Pro Ring for Ace, Pro Ring for Bill, and Pro Ring for Dan. Cal does not get one because we don't have enough money, but also because we're going to get the ribbon for him pretty soon. That's also going to give him instant death resistance. Dan is going to go ahead and sell off his Coral Sword and Mithril Sword. Dan really doesn't need weapons here. He's not a very good fighter. Just can punch things with his bare hands. Maybe that's why he's such an excellent fighter. He just needs to punch things with his bare hands. Alright, so we're going to get 1 house and then 10 more tents. This is enough to finish me off for the rest of the game. I will need 1 more cottage, or 3 more cottages before the end, but I don't have enough money at this point, so I get those at on-rack instead of here. Because I'll have a chance to pick up a bunch of money at the waterfall. Here we go, we've gotten our fairy out of the bottle. We're going to go visit her and claim our Axial, which is a way that we can actually get into the Sea Shrine. It's kind of a strange gimmick, the fact that you need this item to go underwater. Like, you can breathe in lava. Why can't you breathe in water? Before we go there, it is time for Waterfall. Hopefully we see Out of Bounds Bat tonight. We saw him in the challenge run, so I was happy with that. It's a rather good Out of Bounds Bat setting, in fact. You know what? It's time to visit our friend Greg P. One and only chance to see us in the run, which is Remora's here in this version. I think it's Ankegg for the regular Peed for its name. It's a little bit of a strange one for the styling for it for an Ankegg, though. Skip, and then we'll skip here at the mouth of the waterfall again. And I'm glad you guys got to hang out with Out of Bounds Bat. I needed a quick break to refill my drink there. I was a pretty thirsty night after all that talking. Oh no, the nightmare's ambushing us. Well, we'll just have to run away. These guys are only worth 1 Agam worth of experience, so while you could kill them pretty easily with a pair of Ice 2 spells, they're not worth my time anymore. Oh, hey Bat. There you go. Only I could set all the bats on fire, except for Out of Bounds Bat. He's cool. Oh, look at that. Speaking of setting things on fire, we're going to go ahead and burn these mummies up. 2 whiz mummies plus a good number of regular mummies. 5 plus usually, I think, is the limit. I might do 4, but this is 1.5 Agamas right here. So I guess technically these are king mummies. For some reason I thought they were mummy lords, but I forget which one of those is supposed to have spells in Dungeons & Dragons. The king mummy does not, evidently. Just confusing why in English it's called whiz mummy, despite the fact that they are not spellcasters. Same thing with wizards not being spellcasters, it's because they're pisco demons. And another pair of nightmares, so you would be really desperate to take these. I mean, I guess you could if you had one of the mages dead, and so they were significantly far behind. Taking those fights, if you need an Agam's worth of experience, is actually not bad. Going up to level 15. But you kind of hope that you get some good whiz mummy action, especially on the trap tile. Ooh, another one of the same formation. 2 king mummies, 5 regulars, and a chance to strike first. Once we get out of the combat here, I want everybody keeping their eyes peeled down to the south, seeing if we get a pleasant and unexpected surprise by Out of Bounds Bat, my one true bat companion friend. All of the bats are jerks, but this guy, he never gets in our way for speedruns. And so we salute him. Come on, Out of Bounds Bat, give us a showing. Ah, no Out of Bounds Bat tonight. Just so far out of bounds, you can't even find him. That one would have been worth doing if we'd gotten more of the king mummies. You can get up to 5 in the trap tile formation, which is really good. 2.5 Agamas worth right there. Unfortunately, it then placed a bunch of regular mummies, which means it didn't get enough king mummies to start with. It's 1 to 5 king mummies, I think. And they have the first priority in the list. So once it places those, it'll have an idea what the maximum number of regular mummies is going to be. And then cockatrices, and then finally, I think Pyreliths are the last one to get placed down. Okay, so you can use Defender, Ice Brand gets passed down, Flame Sword gets passed down. Go put that ribbon on Cal, we're going to teleport out and save the game. So right there I got my spell charges back, which is why I can just afford to use spells with Abandon here at the waterfall. I need the spell charge back for teleport anyway, because I've got a limited number of those casts. And then I also need to burn 4 battles on the way to Waterfall. This is going to let me get rid of Naga at the start. Naga just casts Thundara over and over again. She's a rather annoying monster, even though it's not a very tough one. It also lets me get rid of 2 Sahagwin... Oh, what level are they? Are they princes in that one? They might be Sahagwin Prince for that. I think it goes Sahagwin, Sahagwin Chief, Sahagwin Prince. So those are the ones I want to get rid of. Unrunnable, poor experience, and they come in packs of 9 total monsters, meaning that it's a rather slow overall fight. By skipping these encounters up here, it actually gets rid of 2 encounters with them later on in the dungeon. Just kind of shifts it off to different floors, so it just happens to work out correctly. Okay, 2... 3 and 4. There's all the cottages I need for the rest of the game. We have enough tents. We've got enough antidotes. I'll need more healing potions, of course, but that's just in time for Temple of Fiends Revisited to pick those up. Go have a chat with Spooky Ghost Mermaid here. Spooky Ghost Mermaid is a lot spookier in the remakes. Basically, you talk to her, she turns into a kind of a transparent shadow, floats up into the air while this creepy music plays. It's supposed to be like an astral projection from the mermaids down to the town there, so that everybody knows that they're in trouble. But here they just kind of disappear and pop out of thin air. Much time I'm on pace to save. I don't know how this run did at the back end of it. I would expect that I could still pick up like another 3 or 4 minutes if the rest of the run goes well. Again, compared to the US version, this has had far fewer playthrough attempts. So just getting like average good luck on things generally let me come ahead on splits. Alright, water elementals here. So I get 1 to 3 of these things. I actually hope for 3 because they're good XP and they are weak to ice. Which means Blizzard does a good number on them. For comparison, my PB on the US version is 3:32, and this version is about 5.5 minutes longer thanks to the credits and the character selection being part of the gameplay for the timing. So like a 3:38 would be a really good time. Alright, diamond armor, so let's go ahead and throw away iron armor there. That's our first upgrade for almost forever for the fighters for the body armor. We got that iron armor for Ace about 18 minutes into the game. It's just like a miracle that it actually is still relevant at this point. Given how much tougher the monsters are and how much more damage they do. A lot of the reason why I can actually survive like this is because I'm manipulating away most of the bad encounters and I know when to heal up. Like I know, okay, this monster coming up is a pretty wimpy one, so I can just run away without having to bother to heal or slow down. And it saves a lot of my recovery efforts, whether it be heal potions or cure spells for the actual fights that make a difference. And here we go, it's Egwin Prince time. Now this is one where I'm just going to have Dan use a heal staff. This probably is unnecessary, but I want to save Dan's spell charges as much as I can. Oh yeah, that was definitely unnecessary. Only the first 2 characters even had damage. Now what's going on here is that the boss at the end here, Kraken 1, is weak to lightning. Cal can just use the gauntlets, and so he has an unlimited number of Lit 2 charges. Dan, though, is competing those Lit 2 charges with his Cure 2s, meaning that those are kind of off limit for the trip down. So I just have Cal's Cure 1s and Cure 2s, Dan's Cure 1s, and I think we do have 1 Cure 2 for each of the fighters if they need to contribute it. But it's not that much healing for how advanced the enemies are getting at this point. Go ahead and grab the mage staff there. Alright, Dragonfire, have a good night. Thanks for hanging out. A lot of these double white shark battles. These are actually pretty good XP. White sharks are a little bit less than 1 agma. It's like 0.9 agmas worth of experience. So double is more than my 1.5 agma threshold. I'll also have 1 opportunity to get White Shark plus Big Eye, which is a ridiculous amount of XP for his difficulty. Big Eye and Odd Eye are like almost equally difficult. I mean, Big Eye just has a whole bunch more HP, but it's worth like, oh, I want to say like 3,200 XP for beating that thing. We've got our diamond bracelet, the best armor we can get for mages in this game. Also going to go ahead and pick up all the items for the diamond gear for the knights. Except for the bracelet, night only for all the diamond items, which is unfortunate because I had to just throw them away or sell them in the challenge playthrough the other day. They're so good. Just like a step up in defensive power from all the fire and ice gear. And one of the few things that actually give you lightning resistance. There's Diamond Helm, Diamond Gauntlet, and the Slab, aka the Rosetta Stone. Okay, Mithril Mail can go. Swap Ruby down. Actually, no, I can swap that up. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Teleport out, and then teleport again. So basically, we got a nice upgrade right there for our mage's armor. We also have no backtracking thanks to having those 2 warp spell casts in there. Basically, the 2 warp spells gets me almost exactly where that hallway is right here, coming in at the entrance. You could also exit out if you've got a white wizard. It would be very, very close on the step routing. It would probably work almost unaltered. How do I know that's a bracelet? Because I can read Japanese. Also, like, if you play this game enough, you would know where the items are. But it does help to be able to confirm things, because there's a few places in the game where you are doing a whole bunch of menuing. And if you ever make a slight menuing mistake, you want to be able to correct those. Hey, look at that deep eye showing up here. So this is the big eye in the US version. And each of these fights where I either got double white shark or white shark plus big eye here, it's 50-50. And we got almost all of them. It means I'm actually going slower through the Sea Shrine because I'm taking the battles, but I'll be in really good shape for my XP totals coming out of this. I might even get 16 before Kraken. A lot of runs I'm getting 16 after Kraken while I'm doing the walk around Lufania. Let's see, what do I have left? I've got Water Elemental Battle, I guess Water Elemental and then Kraken, that's it. Wizards can use exit at level 21 or so. I have to look at that because I thought exit was white wizard only. I'm not entirely confident. You don't get a 6-tier spell charge though until after the levels that you hit in the speedrun. I'm going to end the game with the red wizards at 18, which is not enough for them to get a charge. Now, throughout this dungeon, I've been taking very small step savers. Hey, look at that. There's my 16. That means Ace should probably get 16 at the Water Elemental fight if we get a good number of them. So things like this south edge of rooms are all safe squares. Doorways and one tile south of doorways are safe squares, meaning that I'm trying to hit as many of those squares as possible without going out of my way, my walking path. So, for example, right here, you want to slide along the south edge rather than going directly up to where the treasure chests are. It also lets you avoid the trap tile one to the right of that, which has got a White Shark Sahagwin Prince combo standing on it. And here we are, Kraken's floor. This was still not a bad Sea Shrine in terms of time, even with all the fights that I ended up taking. So I've got 2 more battles here, and then we'll get to the Water Elementals. Water Elementals are unrunnable, but they're such good experience. And if you've got Ice 2, not a hard fight. Without Ice 2, you'd have a lot more of a difficulty with them. They've got very high evasion and high HP. So your fighters could take a long time to kill them. And Ice 1 just simply doesn't do enough damage. It's also single target, so if there was a whole bunch of them, you'd be barely denting their total HP pool. All right, here we go. 1 or 2 or 3. We get just 1. Sadness. I'm going to only use Dan's Ice 2 here. That way Cal has 2 casts of haste left for the Kraken fight. You know, in the off chance that Dan dies. I'm not going to say that's certain that Dan's dying at Kraken. It's just a very, very common occurrence. Alright, and we get Ace's level. So level 16 for everybody. Pretty good pace for my XP growth. I'll be looking for level 17 by the time we kill Bloody. If we get that, I'll know that we're definitely on really, really good shape for the route. And Lobster. So Lobster here got a pretty good chance of poison as well as doing a lot of damage compared to most other monsters. There's poison. Have to go ahead and fix up our party here. Okay, let's use the Knight's Cure 2s first. Cure 2, there you go. Okay, Dan's Cure 2s we want to save, so we'll use Cal's here. Dan Cure 1s are free. Okay, we're good. Didn't use any Cure 2s at all on Dan, which means he's got all of them available for Lit 2s, or Thundaras here on the boss. And they actually do significant damage. You'll often see the mages do more damage than the fighters, even with haste up. So go ahead, haste, add haste. Ace jumping the gun here. Bill, though, respecting the order. Waiting for that haste to be applied so that he gets his 6 attacks per round on the boss. Oh boy. Cal just barely living through that. Dan would have definitely died. Definitely died if that was Dan. And Kraken's got 800 hit points to get through, so we do need another probably 2 solid rounds. Hopefully Cal can stay alive. Kraken does not have a lot of options here besides physical attacks and ink. So I'm just hoping that he doesn't target either of the mages right now. And we should get him this round. Some good attacks. There we go, Dan taking down the Kraken. And with that, our third of the 4 fiends is dead. Time to head on to Sky Castle, but before that, we need to go visit the fabulous Dr. Oon. Everybody knows who this guy is. One skip and then one more. This gets rid of a bunch of awkward encounters on the way down to where I enter into the river. And that gives me one more skip in order to reach the airship. Ding and ding. The reason for those strange kind of walking patterns where I go into the river is because that actually is a safe square every time you get in and out of a vehicle, which for things like the airship and boat don't make a difference, but the canoe, you can reuse it over and over. So diagonal walking, going across a river, kind of crisscrossing like that, actually saves you a whole bunch of steps if you can repeatedly do that process. There's only a few rivers or lakes in the game, though, where it works out. Get our spells recovered, go ahead and get the RNG reset. I need to buy my remaining spells for mages here, so we're going to want to get Raise for Cal, Raise for Dan, and then Curaga for Cal, and Curaga for Dan. Now, Curaga is mostly used for the Chaos fight. It'll sometimes come in handy on Tiamat 1, because that is a really long and drawn-out battle. But I hope to have as many of those charges left over for the end of Chaos. It helps a lot for the fight if you can get enough HP recovery to overcome most of his spell damage. Now, part of the reason I did reset the encounters is going to give me 3 battles against Minotaur, Zombie, and Troll here. Unfortunately, only one in the first formation showed up. 1 to 4 of these Minotaur Zombies and 0 to 2 Trolls. And I hope for a large number because they are decent experience. It's also an unrunnable counter, so I can't just back out in case I get a bad one like that. We'll have 2 more shots at it. We were up on XP until that fight happened. That probably cost me about 750 or a little bit more than an Agama's worth. Tilgus is nowhere near as good. And another single one by himself. That is disappointing. So we are definitely going to have to hope for good luck on the XP in Mirage Tower. I've got a bunch of battles there. Guardians and Vampires are the two monster groups I'll be fighting quite a lot of, assuming that I get enough to show up. I might even take a small pack, as long as it's not 2 of them. Maybe, especially on the Vampires, I would take 3 Vampires as a way to make up the difference. Oh, took a party. There you go. Just trying to get my slab. Try to get to you, translate it, and then get this chime here. It allows me to enter into the dungeon. One more hard reset right there. Gets the encounters back to the beginning. I'll use that to get another one of those Minotaur Zombie Troll fights. Oh, man. We got a single all 3 times. What are the odds of that happening? Each of these is 1 in 12. So that's... 1 in 1,668 chance of getting a single for all 3 battles. That is pretty long odds, but we managed to do it. Hey, Gatronics, welcome in. Couple more squares with the diagonal walking just to save steps going across there. Now, part of that setup, again, was to get better encounters around the Mirage Tower area. So there are things like the Rankelos and dinosaurs and other rather deadly monsters here. Instead, I get Ankelo, which is Beretta here in this version. So we're able to get a monster which is less likely to kill one of the mages. The leveling the same as the American version, yes. So gameplay-wise, there's only a few differences. Like, most of it is graphical for any time that you see differences between the versions. Okay, we got 5 Guardians here, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the battle. If I get 4 or 5 Guardians or Vampires, these are good fights. Basically, they take about the same amount of time regardless of how many show up. So you want to have large numbers. These guys are weak to lightning. Vampires are weak to fire, so they both have an element that you can do significant damage on them. Fastest hard reset ever. It's actually a lot slower than it used to be because I take care to hold the reset button down while powering the console on and off, as any good Nintendo cartridge will tell you about. That reduces the chance of having the game corrupt your save file by a lot. Like, holding the reset button down prevents it from doing writes to memory because it's just basically holding the processor in a frozen state. I'm going to be roughly level 19 at the end, yeah. So I'll go into Temple of Fiends Revisited with the entire party at 18. Ace and Bill will get 19 on the way down, but the mages don't have enough XP available to them to get 19 as well, so they'll end at 18. Am I playing on a Famicom? Yes, so I've got a top-loader Famicom, which is pretty much identical looking to a US top-loader. Ooh, and more Guardians. So we got pretty good luck with all of them showing up for XP. That's kind of helping out for the fact that we got completely shut out in all 3 of the encounters around Lufania. If I get another good series of these on the way up to Blue D, we should be back on track for XP again. Doesn't make a difference on encounters, but going on the left-hand side instead of the right-hand side there does save you, I think, 2 steps. Fiesel pointed out to me, like, very small savings where it doesn't actually affect encounters, and so I hadn't bothered to check for optimization, and then it started really bugging me once I knew that I wasn't going on the absolute minimum number of steps for walking. It was that spot, and then also a spot in Elfland Town after getting the item shopping done. I think that was also a 2-step savings. Ooh, and we got the double Badman, double Nightmare encounter here. So this is another one that's worth 2 Agamas. All the fights that I've taken so far in this dungeon have been 2 Agamas plus for XP, which is pretty good for this point in the game. Not until you get to Temple of Fiends Revisited do you realistically have a chance of getting even higher than this. I wish you could get access to that sooner, just so that you could do grinding. Both of these places are locked out until you meet certain conditions. Temple of Fiends Revisited, you have to beat all 4 Fiends. And for Mirage Tower specifically, you have to have that Chime, which means doing at least the part of Sea Shrine up to the Mermaid section. And because Sea Shrine's so isolated, it doesn't make sense to go to Onrak twice unless you really have to do a bunch of leveling before you can beat Kraken. Go ahead and grab my last item in here, the Aegis Shield. So upstairs I picked up Thor Hammer, Dragon Mail, and Sun Sword. Okay, I can throw away Ice Shield there. Grab the Aegis and teleport out. Okay, so you got your weapons already. You're going to go ahead and get Sunblade. Icebrand can go down to Dan. Thorhammer can go down to Dan. Whip. And whip. Oops. Icebrand, not Thorhammer. Gonna throw away Iron Armor. Move Dragon Mail up there. Dragon Mail, Aegis, Diamond. Put Dan Ribbons on. And save the game again. Now we're all set for the real trip in here. So the real trip, you have to be very, very careful about your step count because of the dreaded Wormek. After 8 difficult floors, you have Wormek and Tiamat waiting for you at the top. You do not want to fight Wormek. I mean, Tiamat is, tough enough by yourself, but Wormek on top of it would be almost certain death. Even with a bunch more levels, Wormek is a very, very tough fight. The hardest fight in the game, harder than Chaos by a lot. Oh, look at that. 5 vampires making their way around here. I'm going to go ahead and take these guys down. I don't have a lot of free fire charges, unfortunately, so I'm going to have Kalandan use Thundara instead. But Bill's got the Mage Staff, which is fire too. Like it when there were 4-on-4 battles. I'm kind of torn. Like 9 enemies is a little bit overwhelming for the way that this game is structured. I probably would have liked it better if they had put the cap a little bit lower on that for both the small as well as the big formations, but they do use the screen real estate really well for this game in general. We're making an optional battle. I mean, it's a super boss that it's not hidden, but it's a rare encounter, so unless I am trying to manipulate it to happen, I can make sure I never see it. Wormek has the second lowest encounter rate on its floor, 3 in 64. So while that floor does have a very, very high encounter rate, if you walk across there, you probably are not going to see it. Look at that blue dragon, beautiful blue dragon. Now, blue dragon here has one move for his skill that does lots of damage. Hopefully he doesn't do it. There it is. Thunder, I mean, Thunder just is very, very heavy attack damage. That's with everybody with elemental resistance to lightning. And hopefully he doesn't do it again. 50-50 each round whether he does it. Alright, there we go. We got him. Okay, Bill Calladan getting 17 there is not bad. We're a little bit behind pace on XP, but not much. Like 1,000 XP off, which is an Agama and a half. So Spirit Naga here, unlike regular Naga, who's a big jerk, regular Naga will do Lit 2 50% of the time every single round. Spirit Naga has 5 rounds, I think, of spells before she gets to anything dangerous. Like her first round there, Blink, Increases her evasion, so now it's going to be harder to hit her. But in general, you've got plenty of time. She does like Mute next. There's Darkness. What's the other one that she does? I think she's got another buff in there as well. Does he drop good loot? There are no loot drops in this game, actually. Monsters only give you experience and gold. He does give you a lot. 32,000 experience and 32,000 gold. Formac is the highest in the entire game by a lot. But there are no items to pick up. You can only get items from shops and from treasure chests that are laying around. That was one of the innovations they added in Final Fantasy II. Oh, look at that. Return of our beautiful Beholder artwork. We'll see this sprite one more time. Death Beholder instead of Phantom at Temple of Fiend to visit it. I wish they could have kept that. It's so good. Like, the drawing is just amazing for Beholder for NES era graphics. But again, trademark and copyright issues with the creators of Dungeons & Dragons made them take it out of the game. And it never came back in the remakes because it was an actual legal problem rather than just censorship. Flame Shield, Mithril Helmet can go away. We're going to pick up replacements here. There's the Diamond Shield and Ribbon. Now, I probably wouldn't bother getting the Diamond Shield if it wasn't for the fact that it's literally on the way to where the Ribbon is. Ribbon is such a good item that it would be very hard to do without those. A lot of the more obscure elemental types cannot be blocked with the items that you have available to you. And so the Ribbon saves you from a bunch of Earth Elemental and Time Elemental effects. Ooh, nice. We get Double Nightmare and Evil Man here. Just call him Death Knight. You have a game that RNG manipulates based off a starting seed. How do I keep manipulation out of Final Fantasy Legend 2? So basically what I do at the beginning of my streams, and I make sure that this is part of the actual stream itself, so I broadcast it, is I walk around, get into battles, basically just trying to scramble up as much as possible. Now in theory, somebody could pretend to be scrambling and actually have pre-planned how much randomization they're going to be doing, but there's nothing you can do at that point. It's kind of trust at that level. And then if I've beaten the game already, I'll just keep the game running so that the RNG is not reset if I'm doing more than one run per night. And that way, I realistically have no way of telling where the encounters coming up are going to be. Let's grab the Adamant, allowing us to forge Excalibur's second best sword in the game. Sadly, we don't get Excalibur right away, because that would really help with the Tiamat fight. You're kind of meant to do this dungeon in two parts. Going in, picking up all the treasures, and then coming back for the boss fight later. They're required to film randomization. If you don't trust the person, I would definitely require it just to be kind of clear. Or if you can recognize what it looks like out of the gate for RNG setups. Like if you know what it happens on power on, and you see, okay, they're doing that behavior, then you know that they didn't scramble it. But like for consistency, if you want to have like speedrun.com rules, you can just say, you know, record the fact that you did the randomization on your broadcast. Make sure it's all available to everybody. In this game from 1989. For the Japanese release, it's earlier than that. And then there was a pretty big gap between the time that it was in the Japanese release and the US market. And that actually helped out quite a lot for comparisons between Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest games. In the US, Final Fantasy came out around the same time as Dragon Quest II, which meant people kind of compared the two, and Dragon Quest II is pretty rough and unpolished, as the first time that they were doing a party-based group on it. And so it was like, okay, clearly the people that did Final Fantasy put a lot more effort and thought into it, and it was a much better put together game. But in Japan, it was actually Dragon Quest III and Final Fantasy out at almost the same time. And so they had a very different perspective in terms of the comparison between the two series as a result. Alright, heal up there a bit. I'm gonna go right and up this time to get my fights. So I'm gonna get Whiz Vampires here, and then we will delay one battle to avoid 2 encounters upstairs. Upstairs being the highest encounter rate means that I can actually trade 2 for 1 by doing this. You know what, we're just gonna fight. I probably shouldn't do this, because the vampire always seems to punish me when I try to save Fire 2 cast, but worked out that time. Now, we only got 1 vampire, which is kind of disappointing. 1 to 3 in that formation, and since they are weak to Fire 2 and give me a lot of experience, I tend to root for getting 2 or 3 if I can get them. The soldier here is Sentry in the US version. This is like the upgraded version of the Guardian. They're both very high HP, very high defense, so meleeing them is tough, but weak to lightning. And that means that the Zeus Gauntlet and Thor Hammer are really impactful weapons to take them down. They will sometimes come together with a Sentry Guardian pair, or Soldier Guardian pair there. And I hope to see that because it gives me a little bit more XP, but I'll take the soldiers by themselves if I have to. I probably shouldn't, but, you know. Uh-oh, the Neochos. So this guy, Nacho in the US version, is the only time you see him in the run. I used to have a whole bunch of Nachos to fight. They're all over the place in the northern part of the world for the canoe areas, but they have a high chance of ambush and poison, so I decided to eventually reduce the number of times that you saw them. Okay, let's see how far we can go with just Cure 1s. Dance Cure 1s still left. I probably should heal all the way. Oh, we can use a Cure 2 here. That's fine. 1 Cure 2 is fine. Well, those symbols got taken out of the US version as part of the general religious censorship. They got replaced by like these triangle-looking squares. Okay, now, Tiamat is a tough fight. She's got a lot of physical defense. As you can see there, we did no damage, pretty much. We're going to try to haste the fighters and then hope that they get criticals. But if they whiff on the criticals, then you basically have a 0 damage round. In that case, Bill did pretty good. 200 damage or so in out of 1,000 that we need to get through. 300 now. We got which version has Temple Floor of Fiends B5 encounters? It's this version. Alright, about 400. I'm going to go ahead and have Dan and Cal heal up here. So you're going to use a Cure 3 and you're going to use a Cure 2. Might have been overkill to have the Cure 2 go off as well. Not actually overkill. Needed the Cure 2 after this. See some B5 encounters. Nope, not gonna do them. Not gonna get the B5 encounters. They're not worth having around. The encounters that are scheduled for Chaos's floor are just the same monsters as the upstairs floor in the dungeon, so it's not anything special from what I recall. Another good 300 or so damage. I'm going to go for it here. We should be close enough that Tiamat is going to fall before our mages do. As long as they don't get munched on too hard. There she goes. Our 4 fiends have been defeated. It is time to take on Chaos and his flunkies. All 4 fiends again, plus Death Beholder there. It's a really fun final dungeon. Lots and lots of boss battles to get through. Does this game have summons like later Final Fantasy games? No. Final Fantasy 4 was the first one with summons. I don't think 3 had them. I could have actually walked in that square. That's a safe square before you would get to Canary anyway, so it wouldn't have impacted the step count. Alright, now let's buy up to 99 heal potions again. I think we had a decent Great Volcano. Nothing special though, so I probably need like 55, 60 potions right here. So we're going to go ahead and purchase these while you can admire the man's mustache. Enjoy the plentiful background music that plays constantly in this shop. It never stops, 24/7 going like this. Final Fantasy 3 did have summoners. I forget if it had a summoner class. Final Fantasy 3 was the first really class-based game. It's got a very similar system to Final Fantasy 5 and Final Fantasy Tactics for being able to change what your job is and learn job points to pick up skills. But I didn't remember if it had the summoner class at that point. I know that Final Fantasy 4 had it because you had Rydia with the summons. Already got Blink for everybody, so I can go ahead and just go to Dwarf Cave, pick up Excalibur, which is going to be going to Bill. Bill's going to have most of the good weapons throughout the game. So what I basically do is put him in the second slot, give him all the good weapons so that he's less likely to be dead or paralyzed or have other status elements affecting him. And then Ace goes in the first slot with the best armor. That way he's kind of the tank protecting Bill from a lot of the nasty monsters. There's only a couple of spots where you want to actually swap those roles around. And being consistent like that means that you've got a very slightly higher chance of surviving encounters. It's very, very slight, though. It's generally unlikely that you're going to have both of them get paralyzed. And when they both are, or one of them are going to be attacking, they usually have almost the same amount of gear for weapons and armor. You want a shopkeeper perler? I mean, I guess you can make one. Nothing's stopping you. There we go. No more potions can be purchased. We are out of there. And on to Dwarf Cave next. I'm going to go ahead and skip one encounter here, which is actually one of the encounters I need to burn off anyway for going into Temple of Fiends. Alright, Ecotronics, have a good night. Hope you enjoy the rest of the stream. I'll be done pretty soon. Unless something goes horribly wrong at Temple of Fiends. Oops, a little bit farther over. Alright, so we need to put on Excalibur on you. We're going to go ahead and give Thor Hammer to Ace. Ooh, we are really close to our level. So that means I think only one battle here inside of Temple of Fiends to get level 18 for everybody. That's really nice. I'll basically burn off the rest of the encounters until I get the entry point that I want for the dungeon. And here we go, 2,000 years in the past for the purposes of grinding. I basically have 6,000 to 7,000 experience saved up right here in case I am short of 18. I almost always am. It's actually very, very uncommon to get 18 by the time we're exiting Sky Castle there. But this one is close enough that I think this one battle will do it for everybody, even Ace, although technically I only need Calendan to get 18. Chimeras work weak to ice here, which is why Blizzara Ice 2 is a really good choice for him. Blizzara works very well on water elementals that we had back at the Sea Shrine, the Nightmares at Mirage Tower and Sky Castle, and these Chimeras. And that's the reason why I actually get that spell. You're already in the Black Magic shop buying haste anyway, so you might as well pick it up at the same time, assuming that you actually have a couple of chances to actually grind on it. There we go, Ace, Bill, Calendan getting their levels. And again, this is the last level Calendan are ever going to get. Ace and Bill, though, do get 19 at the later part of the temple. Right at the very, very end, you'll see him pick it up. Yeah, if you want to do scoring for Final Fantasy, when it's on the Famicom, you have to do it by hand, unfortunately. I mean, I could actually teach the bot to read Japanese in not too much time, because it's just the vision recognition part of it and not actually the gameplay or the border code. But given that I don't do Famicom runs that often, I decided not to make the time investment for it. Do I speedrun other games as well? If you look at my channel page, you can see the big list of games that I've done speedruns for. Right now, my common ones I'm doing are Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy Legend 2, which is going to be at RPG Limit Break in a couple weeks, and then also Astal, which is my submission to Summer Games Done Quick. Probably I'll be mixing Final Fantasy Mystic Quest back in there as soon as I get some time for it. Alright, this should be our zombie fight. Hey, Magmafish, welcome in. And there we go. The only time zombies appear in the speedrun. So if you've got zombies on your fantasy team, you have to hope that it's either Dan goes first like that, and we get a can't run, or the zombies ambush us, or a critical hit, or something other really fluky occurrence takes place. I mean, it's a $1 monster, so you know. You pay your money and you take your chances about whether or not they're going to give you anything at all. Right, white dragons. Not a fun fight, but luckily we can run away. In the remake versions where it is actually an opposed agility check, monsters agility versus your luck score, those are very terrifying fights. I basically have to save scum to get across the dungeon floor. Whereas here, your running is so good that it's just like, yep, see you later. Have I ever speedrun any of the Suikoden games? I have not. I don't know who's actively doing Suikoden. OmniGamer was doing it most recently. I think he does like Suikoden 2 and 3. He did those at RPG Limit Break, I think 2 years ago, was it? But it's a series that doesn't have a lot of runners for the community. Man, we got ambushed by 8 bad men. Black Knights here are basically just meleeers, so not really big damage dealers. But as you can see there, a lot of them show up and it's a slow fight if they go first or take turns. I'm glad you guys enjoy Asta. I have a lot of fun doing action games. This is a way to alternate off of some of the more hardcore RPG grinding. Here we go, Death Beholder time. Look at that. See you later, Death Beholder. Bill says, get out of here. The 8 monster ambush is pretty bad. We'll also have a potential to see that at Kraken's floor as well. The 2 battles I get at the beginning of Kraken's floor both have usually 8 or so monsters. It's either 7 or 8 depending on what the formation shows up as. And if you get an ambush there, it's very, very painful. Kraken's floor killed a lot of GBA speedruns, just getting that formation with ambushes over and over again. In contrast, the Badmen are actually a relief because the other monster that's very common up on that top floor is Gas Dragons, and those things are unrunnable and do a lot of damage and really hard to kill. There's our purple worm. That's the last unrunnable encounter for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and just get out of all of these, except for one fight on the next floor, Lich's elemental floor. Lich's floor needs some special setup, because the boss has been given a really powerful spell for the refight. It's called Nuke, and it does 240 damage to the entire party, and that's more HP than our mages have. So rather than chance that both mages die and the run is just over, instead what I do is manipulate the next encounter to be green Medusas. Those are going to be able to turn our mages to stone, which will then manipulate as well as best we can to hopefully make this a fast process. Go ahead, throw away the gauntlets there, take ribbon off, Put Dan and Cal at the front. Now, we do need the Medusas to cooperate here. If they decide to be uncooperative, this can take a while. Okay, you're gonna white shirt, armlet, you can do whatever, and I guess you should defender here. Want to have Bill defender so that he's got increased evasion. Hey, nice, Cal went down. And that means he's less likely to get paralyzed. The Medusas do have paralysis on their physical attacks, and that's what got Dan there at the top, so we weren't able to white shirt in addition to defendering. Do I technically only need to petrify one mage? Kind of. The problem is that would cost you another spell charge of the 5th tier. And those are very, very valuable to have. Not having all your 5th tier spell charges makes the chaos fight harder. And you might run out entirely if Beholder or Death Beholder and Kraken 2 go after you. Alright, so they got both mages down. We're gonna go ahead and Thor Hammer and Mage Staff here. I did remember to pass the Thor Hammer to Ace. Sometimes I forget to do that, but it's usually when I get Excalibur on, so that he can just do it for this one battle. The mages don't really need any more attack spells for the rest of the game. And like that, we have set up for the Lich fight. Now, Ace and Bill are getting double XP right here because the game basically treats the mages as being dead. So instead of splitting experience 4 ways, it's being split 2 ways. And I'll keep them petrified for the next floor as well to take advantage of that. Okay, Lich 2 time. Will we get nuked? There's the flare. 394, that's a big one. Almost max damage on that. As you can see, nuke is a pretty nasty spell. But we survived. We'll always have at least 400 HP with the fighters with this particular setup, so no real danger for them. And Lich doesn't have much else that he can do until he gets another spell off, which would be Paralyzation for Ace, potentially. And then finally a spell which could be instant death, but he should be dead by then. Like, if Bill can't hit him or kill him with 2 Excaliburs, he's really done a bad job. Bill could actually one-shot both Lich and Carry with good hits. Hey, Super Flare Star. Yeah, it's been a pretty good run so far. Now, again, this is Japanese, which I don't do a lot of runs on, so this is kind of like this is an average US playthrough. It's not exceptional in any regard, but definitely good to see that no mistakes have been made at all during the run tonight, and no really bad luck segments. Jump behind the mages. I don't want the statues to break. I need to bring them back to life. Why play the Famicom version tonight? Yeah, pretty much just for fun. I haven't played it in a while. I don't get a chance to do it very often. And so this seemed like a good opportunity to pull it out. I kind of paired it along with the challenge run for what I had planned for the weekend. So I was glad the challenge run did only take 1 night of playthrough. I was kind of worried when I got Black Mage, White Mage, Thief, and Black Mage for my 4 character roles. That was a scary party to start with. Go ahead and grab the Pro Cape here. Cape of Protection is going to be used by Cal. Gives him 8 extra absorb. One of the 2 items that can actually go into the Red Mage's shield slots. The other one being Buckler at Crescent Lake for 2,500 gold. And that's only 2 absorb, so I don't bother with it. Alright, go ahead, put on the Mage's gear again. You'll be very, very sad if you forget to put those weapons on, because Carrie's or Marilith's Fire 3 is pretty devastating. So fight, and you're going to go ahead, haste Bill. Bill's got more attack power by far with the Excalibur there. So since we can only afford to use 1 haste right here, it goes to him. Do you not choose your characters in the original version? So what I did over the weekend, I actually got this on Friday night, was I rolled my characters at the beginning of the night, and whatever characters came up, I had to pick. Normally you can pick what classes that you have for everybody in the party. It was just a challenge run to do it constrained like that. And I was kind of hoping I would get some decent characters, but I got pretty much the worst character party setup. No melee attackers at all for realistic purposes, and nobody with enough HP to survive in the late game. So it was a rather tough run. Two black belts ninja red mage. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Black belts get HP fast enough that they don't have any trouble with like Lich 2 with Flare there or with Chaos at the end. And the red mage gives them some more survivability. Early on, the red mage can get Fire 2 and Lit 2, allowing you to do plenty of damage for early game grinding before the black belts get strong. And then you do have one person that can cast life in the late game in case something bad happens. Speaking of something bad happening, we need to get ready for Kraken. This is a very, very scary fight. Here we go. Blink, 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 and white shirt. Whew, boy, punched an ace right there in the face like that. Luckily, he's got enough HP to survive that. Cal or Dan would have just been crumpled into paper by that blow. That would have done like another 300 damage to the mages. Is Warrior the best class? I think so for a lot of situations. They have very, very good gear. They get very good stat growth. And there's very little downsides, except for not being able to handle area of effect attack spells very well. So they don't have a good option for what to do when there is a lot of monsters on screen at once. They're pretty top-notch. The red mages are the counterparty. They can do decent area effect damage, and they are strong enough to survive the early game as well, so they pair together really well. Now, black wizards would do more damage, just because they've got more spell charges to carry around, but they are very, very weak and spindly, so they get crushed very easily by the bosses. Hated the black belts, interesting. Like 4 black belts is a pretty easy run. I mean, you just hold down the punch button a lot, so you don't even think about it. It's kind of a boring run as a result. That should be good enough to get across here. There's a couple of tough battles at Tiamat's floor. We're going for the Mazmune first, or the Masamune as it's called in this version. Mazmune comes from the fact that they shortened it for English to fit into the dialogue box for it. Alright, Purple Worm time. So this is another unrunnable encounter, the last unrunnable random encounter that we have to deal with. And this is where Ace and Bill are going to get level 19. Fighters are actually pretty cheap. If you actually look at how much it costs to buy spells for a lot of the spellcasters, those are expensive things. Far more so than any item in the game for weapons or armor. And on top of that, you do have most of your good armor coming from treasure chests, as well as your good weapons in the late game. Here's Bill getting 19. Ace does not get 19. I guess he'll get it at Tiamat. This will be really close. I'm not going to do any extra battles for it. If Ace doesn't have 19, that's fine. I guess we did get the minimum number of purple worms and fire elementals on the way down here. So we had 1 upstairs for purple worm, 3 down here. That's 1 to 2 and 3 to 4 for those. And we had 3 fire elementals, and that's 3 to 4 as well. Yeah, fighters feel expensive, but that's just for the early game. Late game, it totally flips around. Okay, so Excalibur is going to go up there. Sun Sword, Defender, Excalibur, Masamune, Sunblade, Defender. I'm gonna just go ahead, Warp. I'm not gonna bother healing until we get to Tiamat. We've got one last random encounter the entire game right here. It's gonna be a bunch of stone golems. There we go. Alright, Tiamat, time to take down the last of the 4 Fiend refights. Now, for this one, you've got Excalibur and Masmune, so even though she's got 20 more absorbed than she had back at Sky Castle, you can crush this boss so much faster. Good. Bill got the fast in time, which means our Masamune is doing overdrive damage now. So this is a whole bunch of attacks per round and really powerful ones. So he's basically, even with a wimpy hit there, done about twice as much as we had for any of the rounds of damage back at Sky Castle. Oh man, this looks like the 3-round Tiamat, a shame. Come on, Cal and Dan, bail me out. Don't make me go to 3 rounds. Cal, not helping. Dan, you're a helper. Oh, Dan tried. I'm going to give Dan a lot of credit for that. Here is Bane. Hopefully nobody dies. Good. Everybody successfully survived. 3 in 56 chance that Bane goes right through your ribbon. How does a solo White Mage beat Chaos? Actually easier than a solo Thief by a large margin. Because the White Mage can actually heal herself. There's Ace getting level 19, so we are good for our levels. Time for Dan to shine here. One last glorious moment of victory. Okay, and Urban's going to go down to Ace. Replace the Diamond Helmet. Perfect. We've been waiting 2,000 years for this moment. The time for Dan to take charge of this party. So far tonight, Ace has been the only person that's died. He was killed by Astos and petrified by a cockatrice. Everybody else is still alive through the entire run. Will that streak continue? $2,000 hit points to get through here, and hopefully no bad Cure 4s. Don't want to see any Curages. Okay, both of our fighters jumped the gun on haste. That's unfortunate. 150. Dan, see you later. See you later, Dan. Okay, Blizzaga, that's his first spell in his spell list. 4th spell is Cure 4. We don't want to see that. Okay, about 400 damage. This has been a slow start. We need some big hits by Bill especially to get back on track here. About 600 damage in at spell number 1. 750. Ooh, there's a good one. Over halfway now. Coming up on 1100 damage. There's slow, so that's spell number 3, and it landed on Bill, so actually, no, it didn't land on Bill successfully. It was avoid it. There we go. Unfortunately, his next spell is Curaja. Come on, Bill. Finish him off. Come on, Ace. Finish him off. You can do this. We got good turn order. And we get him. 334 on Chaos. That's a pretty darn good time. That corresponds to a 333.40 something in the US version. So that would have been like a really hot night for any playthrough. But we still have to get to the credits here. This is the Japanese version as we time out all the way until the very last beat of the end. But look at that. That was up to the very end there, top to bottom, an extremely solid run. I'm happy with that one. Now, while you guys are watching the ending credits, we'll talk about tomorrow's plans are Final Fantasy Legend 2. That is going to be a normal stream, 78 minutes for the start. And we'll do, again, random character selection for Final Fantasy Legend 2. I'll be doing a lot of Final Fantasy Legend 2, especially as we get closer to RPG Limit Break. Hopefully also with Fantasy Final Fantasy Legend 2 once I get the time for it. I'll do like a debut stream before that is actually ready. So you can see the recognition for all of the monster choices on it. But who do we go and pick here? Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good improvement for the Japanese version. This would be like a minute and a half slower than the US best that I've got, but that's a crazy good run. This is actually like in the top 3 or 4 runs that I've probably done, just in terms of overall quality. Especially doing all the menuing in Japanese probably cost me a few seconds over the course of it. Like, I can't really think of anything that really went wrong in that run the entire night. Disappointed no leaderboard, yeah. I mean, fantasy just doesn't come up often enough with the Japanese version to be worth it. I have thought about it a lot for doing it, but I figure that if we're going to do fantasy, we might as well do it in English so that people can follow along and understand the game better. Alright, I got somebody picked out here. So Background Guy 02, once we are done with the credits, we're going to go ahead and give him a host. He's doing Final Fantasy 13-2. This is a blind playthrough for him, so he doesn't know the storyline or where to go. But this is actually not that bad of a game. I know people that don't like the Final Fantasy 13 series, but I actually enjoyed them for a lot of the aspects that they brought to the table. It felt like they were trying for a more interactive and real-time style of combat. They had started that with Final Fantasy 12. And this is just like a really polished version of that style of play. I'll go ahead and give them a host here, but not until these credits are done. Once again, Japanese timing running all the way till the very end of the end. Dan should have been MVP. I think Bill or Cal had a much more legitimate case to make for that. They did very well throughout that run. There we go, 339.16, and with that,